Alice, can you take roll call?
Of course. Steve So, President.
Here.
Ina Gerges, First Vice President.
Here.
Robert Aguilar, Second Vice President, and L Rep, he is running late. Alice Licata, Recording Secretary, present. Inga Smolyar, Treasurer, and Brooklyn Borough President appointee. Inga? Are you here yet, my friend? I'm sure she's coming. We'll look for her. Alan Aja, IEP rep, he is for sure running late. Mauricia Cadillo, council member. Mauricia? Okay, we'll look out for her. Yifeng Chen, council member, I saw you.
Here.
Hi, thank you, Yifeng. Adele Doyle? Okay, we're looking out for Adele as well. Vito Labella, council member.
Here, ma'am.
Simeon Stoltzberg, the other Brooklyn Borough President appointee.
Here.
Thank you, Simeon. That is everyone. We are quorum. Thank you.
Great. Before the meeting begins, I would just like to go over the housekeeping items, some administrative items. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for CEC 20's March business meeting. I want to remind everyone that this is a public meeting and it is being recorded. The only people who should share their cameras are the superintendent, CEC members, and our guests. Very importantly, I also would like to announce that there are Spanish, Arabic, and Mandarin interpreters here tonight working on separate lines. You should see video of these interpreters. Thank you to them for being here with us and providing this important service to our Spanish, Arabic, and Mandarin speaking families. The interpreters will now introduce themselves. Would our Spanish interpreters like to introduce themselves first?
Yes, good evening. The following message will be given in Spanish, offering interpretation services. Buenas tardes para las personas que deseen escuchar esta conferencia en español. Por favor, marquen desde sus teléfonos el número 347-966-4114 y el PIN o ID de la conferencia 291-704-219, símbolo numeral. Nuevamente, el número para la conferencia en español es el 347-966-4114 y el ID de la conferencia es el 291-704-219, símbolo numeral. Si usted desea escuchar el audio en español, pero desea permanecer en esta conferencia virtual de Zoom y verlo en su computador, por favor asegúrese de poner silencio en su computador o bajar el volumen y marcar desde sus teléfonos a la línea de conferencia en español, que es nuevamente el número 347-966-4114 y el PIN o ID de la conferencia 291-704-219, símbolo numeral. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Would our Arabic translators please introduce themselves?
Hi, good afternoon. This is Heidi. I'll be happy to interpret for you. This coming message will be in Arabic. أهلا بكم، مساء الخير. اللي حابب إنه يحصل على ترجمة باللغة العربية من فضلكم الاتصال على رقم التليفون 347-966-4114 وبعد كده عليكم إدخال رقم البين أو الرمز 341-954-935 وبعدين علامة الشباك. مرة تانية عشان الترجمة العربية تقدروا تتصلوا برقم التليفون 347-966-4114 وبعديها على طول دخلوا الرمز 341-954-935 وعلامة الشباك. في حالة الاستماع للترجمة باللغة العربية ممكن تشوفوا بس الاجتماع على الزوم وتوطوا الصوت خالص عشان تقدروا تسمعوا من الهاتف الترجمة العربية. شكرا لكم.
Thank you. And finally, would our Mandarin interpreter please introduce themselves?
大家晚上好，如果有需要中文普通话
翻译的家长，请拨打电话347-966-4114，然后输入密码531610726加井号键。再重复一遍，有需要中文普通话翻译的家长，请你拨打电话347-966-4114，然后输入密码531610726加井号键。同时，如果你想看网上的视频，那么麻烦你把电脑的话筒、麦克风还有手机同时调静音，这样不会影响到会议。谢谢 ，Thank you。
Thank you. And just a reminder for anyone speaking tonight, because we have simultaneous interpretation taking place, please try to speak slower than usual to allow the interpreters to keep up. And with that, I think we are ready to proceed with the business meeting. The first item on the agenda is approval of the February business meeting minutes. Natalia, can you share the minutes for the February business meeting? Everyone, please take a moment to review. One thing that's, I just noticed, we were just talking about this, but tonight we're planning to have a possible budget motion, and it looks like we did it last week in the business meeting. And there was some discussion earlier tonight about whether that had to be done in the calendar meeting or the business meeting, but I think I'll just assume it's okay to do it in the business meeting.
Oh, do you mean to take another chunk of?
Yeah,
right?
in a few minutes when I introduce that motion. So it's
agree.
good to know we can go ahead and do that in the business meeting and not do it in the calendar meeting. The minutes look fine to me. Are there any amendments or changes requested to the business meeting minutes from last month? Going once, twice. The business meeting minutes are approved. Okay. So the first new business item that I wanted to bring up tonight is.
Did you want to do the minutes for the special meeting too?
We could.
Yeah, let's knock that out here instead of the calendar meeting. Might as well, Natalia.
Did everyone get a chance to look at them? They went out this afternoon.
Can you share those, Natalia?
I see one change when we're ready.
Go ahead, Vito.
So I said that what I'd suggested was that something in the bylaws stating that computers will be used to be able to stream and to be able to stream on Zoom, irrespective of whether we are live at 89th Street or some location or home. That was the intention of the bylaws change, not that they'll just be used for computer business.
Do you mean giving future
Okay.
council members the opportunity to be remote,
So yes,
even if the DOE or the state comes down? I mean, I'm all for it, but will be overruled if they decide.
well, I don't know. That was my suggestion, whether
Okay.
it was overruled or not. I mean, that's
Sure.
what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
Yeah. So Natalia, you got that?
I make.
Mhm.
Awesome.
I have just a couple of really small typos. I will just email Natalia tomorrow, just before they
Okay.
go online. Can we just confirm the situation with Padlet, though? We have confirmed that it is not an external website and that it can be used during committee meetings to elicit parent feedback in that meeting. Is that what we came up with?
Yeah,
We just went back and forth so many times. I just would love to.
sure. I think that was the ultimate conclusion, Alice, is that as long as it's not an external site and it's sort of meeting specific, and at the end of the meeting, it's
Right.
locked basically, then
Yeah,
I
it's
think
not
that's fine.
available anymore. Yes, and I think that's how it always works within the DOE anyway, and that's what's, okay, great. So that's what Steve said, just confirming. So I would move to approve these minutes if no one has an objection.
I'm just looking to see that that's
Second,
the way it's reflected here.
I think it is. We did go back
Yeah,
and forth a lot, so.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff here.
Mhm. I heard Vito's second whenever you're ready, Steve.
No, and it can motion, yeah, I mean,
I got
all
you.
in favor of approving the special meeting minutes?
Aye.
aye.
In favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Meeting minutes approved. Thank you,
Minute-
Natalia. Great
Okay.
job, always.
So for the first item on the business agenda, on the business meeting agenda, I just wanted to provide an update and get some feedback on the parent survey. And this is not intended to be sort of an exhaustive, thorough discussion. And I am planning to call a committee meeting. Officially, we have a parent survey committee set up. And I'd like to have a meeting of anyone who's interested to sort of join the committee meeting for a more in-depth discussion. But just a few things to highlight tonight. One, I've shared this before, but the timeline is to start the design process now and get it administered and analyzed and reported to us by our last meeting, June 9th. I'm in the process of spoken to a few different vendors. We've gotten clearance from the powers that be to allocate budget money towards the survey. I've spoken to 3 different vendors so far, and I'll just sort of share some details on those conversations. One of them is Survey Gizmo. It's now the company, it was acquired by a company called Alchemer last year. So this Survey Gizmo was recommended to us by the Department of Translation and Interpretation as having very good language services. And the one thing is that they're not an approved DOE vendor yet. And so we would need to potentially go through that whole process. But I spoke to the company and very good conversation. The thing I liked a lot about them is that they have a couple levels of service. One is the full service, design, customize, and then do the data analysis and sort of reporting and come back to us. They also have a licensing arrangement where we could just pay on a monthly basis. It's like $150 per license. And so, per person. So that would obviously be, we'd use their software, we'd design it ourselves, but we have access to their database of questions and their software platform. So that was Alchemer, AKA Survey Gizmo. I spoke to another company called Pride Survey, and they specialize in school surveys. And they only offer full service, but they were helpful because they gave me sort of a sense of what, it was another price point in the full service model. And oh, and by the way, Alchemer's full service model starts at $5,000. And Pride surveys, they do it on a per survey basis. And so we'd have to make a little bit of an educated guess as to what kind of responses we would get, the number of responses we'd get back yet. But it's in the several $1,000s range, basically. We can think about it. And they don't offer a more, they don't offer a do-it-yourself approach, basically. And then the third company I think we've probably all heard of is Qualtrics, which is a well-known, they do all kinds of surveying surveys. And they offer two products. They offer the full service, and they also offer what they refer to as their plug and play. And the pricing, and they're not able to give me specific pricing yet. I have a call tomorrow with a sales rep, but I told them our rough budget, basically everything we have left in the reimbursement money. And I said, it won't be the whole amount. It'll be some part of that. And they said, that should be very doable for the plug and play model. Or actually, I think she was referring to also to the full service model. Anyway, I need to get more specifics from them. But the one catch with them is it's an annual subscription. So we would be, it would outlive us. It would go to the next council. And if we'd be paying for, in theory, something we wouldn't be using, but maybe they would make use of it. So those are just the three vendors I've spoken to. And so one, I would love it if anyone has any other, survey companies that they know of out there, shoot me an email. And two, I want to talk now about budgeting for the project, because what I'd like to propose now is that of the remaining reimbursement money, we could transfer some amount, who's ever willing to give up their reimbursement money, let's transfer that to an unsecured budget line, and we can spend that and we've cleared this with the DOE. We could spend that on the survey. So if, and I also emailed everyone about this. And so if this is a conversation that someone would rather have offline, that's totally fine.
Can I just get some clarity about
Go for it.
what we're talking about? So when we buy these packages, are they going to do the surveying of people, or is it our responsibility to get people to fill out the forms?
We have to do it. The DOE won't let us share any contact information with third parties.
So we're going to then be relying on volunteers responding to a survey through a link online somehow?
Yeah, I mean, the primarily, when you say volunteers, Simeon, you mean the parents voluntarily doing it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be able to get a random sample of our community. It's going to, again, be determined on. So I guess my concern is spending this much money for getting a result that I don't think is going to be scientifically valid unless we can get large enough response rate. And
would it be worth reaching out to, a couple thoughts on that. The absolute level of responses, if I'm not mistaken, last survey we did in July, we got about 2,000 responses. And I told that to the woman at Qualtrics or Pride Surveys, and she said that was a very good number. She thought that was a good response rate, and because I told her the number of students in our district. But you're talking more about, like, Simeon, I think you might be talking more about an even more targeted. Let's say we want to break this down by certain cohorts or demographics and trying to get, for example, across every grade or across different regions. Is that more what you're talking about?
Well, it could be, but I think, if we get 2,000 responses and we could show that it's representative of the community as far as race and grade level and income level and all those things, then I'd feel more comfortable with it. But if we don't know if these 2,000 people are all from one side of the district or another side of the district, or if they're all white and don't represent people of color, or if they're all low income or high income,
Yeah.
then it totally skews the results. So if there's no random sampling, then we're kind of,
But it is going to be self-selection bias no matter what we do. Is that correct?
It might be worth me following up with, I mean, I don't know if this is true or not, but in my mind, that's something that the full service model would get us. It would get us one of these survey firms. Tricky, but maybe we can't share data with them about obviously about all of our parents, I don't think, but I think the full service model involves them potentially guiding us toward a true sampling procedure. And this is definitely something that we should follow up on, so we know if the money that's being spent on it gets us what we think it does.
so I mean, if we're having to get people to fill it out, then that's not sampling unless we are somehow able to know who we are asking to fill it out beforehand.
And Simeon, when you say also, would you be do you think we'd be comfortable with it's sort of beforehand versus just looking at the results afterhand and having a greater degree of
Well, that's, I mean, I think
validity?
if we're going to have voluntary responding, we're trying to get as many people, then I think we're going to have to do an analysis that says, is this any way representative of our community?
Right.
And what I worry about, of course, is spending $5,000 and then finding out that the 2,000 people are totally skewed. And so to say
Right.
that this data is useful is a stretch.
Yeah,
Simeon?
I think a clear follow-up is, in order to justify the full service price, it would have to, or I think, Simeon, your request is, let's see if they can include some kind of, statistical sampling process.
Yeah.
Simeon,
Yeah.
are there tools that you're aware of that can take kind of like a self-reporting situation and use some kind of extrapolation to get more general results?
Well, I think
Did
that's
articulate that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what you need to do is look at if you have a certain number of people and see, how many it is and compare it to how many are in the district, and then to be able to say, we can reliably say that within a certain percentage that this is probably close to what that population thinks. There should be some way of statistically doing that, but I still, for them to say 2,000 out of 40,000 is a good response rate, that when it's completely non-random, I'm suspicious of. So I'd love to.
Isn't it 56,000?
2,000. Well, guys, don't forget that that's the number of students. But I was saying, we have 35,000 K through 8 students. There's
So those
probably
parents might easily
20,000
represent,
family.
4,000 or 5,000 even, but still.
Yeah.
I think Alice has her hand up.
Go ahead, Alice.
The last survey too, just to go to the point of it not being random, when we were self-selecting, and you said this, Steve, that, predominantly came from about 6 schools, right? Because you
Yep.
Yep. So, and the Bay Ridge, it's the usual suspects. I wonder how we could do better outreach to the schools that we want to hear from, because we want to hear from our L communities, right? We want to hear from people who've been really affected by the pandemic and remote learning and blended learning. And it's more than I thought it was going to be.
To that end, I think partnering with the district to do this would be our best bet, and getting the parent coordinators and the principals and everybody to really push this with parents.
Yeah, could we fund the district doing it? Is that a workaround so that it's going to every school and I don't know, there's more of a, I don't know. Fill out the survey from the school either. So.
No, partnering with the district is a yes. I've spoken to Sylvia about this, and also going through the President's Council and PTAs is another channel that I've had conversations about and gotten good responses from both. So,
okay, so
we could put incentives in the budget to give a reward to the school that gets the highest percentage of families to fill it out, things like that, just ways to increase our numbers to make it a useful survey.
Yep, no, the incentives was a thing I've read a little bit about. Yep. Any other, and then I guess if there's no other general comments on it, is anyone, anyone who wants to can sort of talk about, sort of volunteer on their budget reimbursement now, or just email me after. That's totally fine. And let's just take that all offline and we can work out the exact numbers, because some has been claimed already, some has been moved to the laptops. And so we will just take this offline and figure out the best way to go from there. But basically, of the remaining 6,800, we'd like to get as much of it possible transferred to the unsecured line before March 25th, which is the deadline for transfers to spend on the survey. So look for a announcement on the survey committee meeting coming up. And anyone who wants to sort of work on it, let me know. That'd be great.
Correct me if I'm wrong, sorry, but won't we need to reconvene for a special meeting to move money?
I know, Alice, I knew you were gonna say, I knew it. I'm sorry. I can't think of a way around it other than if we want everyone to be able to do this offline, let's just, we have a 5-minute special meeting. So you're muted, Alice.
I actually have to take a phone call. So moving on. Okay.
Well,
Maybe if we all figure it out offline and then just come and vote.
If we can figure it out offline by the end of the business meeting, that's great. And I've seen emails coming through from a few people already. So anyway, let's just table that for now. Email me or text me if you want to say yes or no on your budget reimbursement, and I'll try to get a sense of it by the end of the business meeting. Let's move on. The next item on the agenda is budget, and I don't know if there's, I think we're good on budget, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but is Inga on yet? And Natalia, do we have anything else to do on the budget right now? I don't believe we do. We've already
No, I
cleared.
think it was just putting aside money for the I've lost the word.
The laptop purchases and the fee.
No, for the, what we were just talking about.
Survey.
Yes, survey.
Yeah.
I think that was it.
That's it, right? Okay. Next up, Simeon has an initiative that he is going to talk about.
So, typically the way we've done resolutions is somebody drafts something and then everybody responds to it. And then we try to revise it to see if it's passable. And then we have a discussion and try to get it passed at a meeting. I'm trying to sort of shift that paradigm a little bit by having a discussion now, just to see where people are standing and thinking. And I'd like to talk a little bit about sort of if the CEC is interested in a resolution about the future, and particularly thinking about this summer and the next school year and what that might look like, and if there are positions that we might want to stake out and push the DOE to move in that direction. So, thinking about this summer, obviously, the question that I have is, what is the DOE going to do for students? I mean, I think we all know that there's been potentially a lot of learning loss. And is the DOE going to offer anything specific this summer? And have they started planning for that? So that could, particularly if there's space in buildings for in-person learning, and I think there's obviously a need for that. Is that something that people would be interested in supporting? The other thing is making all of the electronic computer-based programs that the DOE has accessible to parents all during the summer as well, so that kids could keep learning using computer-based programs as well. There's a lot of interesting research coming out about high-dose tutoring, and there are a lot of interesting programs that have curriculum and professional development for teachers. But that's all a big investment of time and money. And the question is that something we want to push the DOE towards, or our district towards? So that's about the summer. The next question is next fall. And I think now is the time to start planning for next fall. And the mayor has said that he is planning to open the schools 5 days a week for all students. But there's no plan for that yet. And so part of me wants to hear from everyone else. What do you all think about that? To me, that sounds like a good idea. I think the evidence seems to suggest that there's very little transmission within schools, and that with teachers having the ability to be vaccinated and at-risk people having the ability to be vaccinated, there's a big potential to opening 5 days a week next fall. The other question is, what does that mean for remote learning? And do we need to maintain a remote learning system of some sort in this district? I personally think it'd be great if there was a remote learning program that continued indefinitely for the rest of history. That could be used on snow days. It could be used for students who are sick and can't come to school. It could be used for students who are suspended, but I don't think it makes sense for it to be operated out of individual schools. So I personally would love to see a district-wide remote learning program that has some kind of consistent curriculum, that has teachers that are specifically trained for remote learning instruction, that could be used for next fall for people who aren't ready to bring their kids back to school. And then there's the larger question of what is going to be done to build trust to get people back in the schools? Are they just going to throw open their doors and tell everybody we're shutting down all the other programs, you have to come back? Or are we going to try to maintain programs? So I'm just sort of laying out a lot of ideas, and I'd like to just hear from people now, and then I'm trying to think about a resolution that I'd like to draft and send out to people to start looking at. But I just want to have a conversation first before I dive into that. Vito, I see your hand up.
Alice, did you want to go first? So there's a cohort of individuals out there who want schools to open tomorrow, irrespective of everything else going on in the world. As usual, I try to split the difference. Come September, what I expect is completely normal learning with completely normal occupancy. And if any teachers have an issue with that, I would expect they come in with whatever protective gear makes them feel comfortable, or they take family leave or sick leave, or they take a sabbatical, and then we can hire a substitute to take their place until they feel comfortable coming into work. I believe the teachers are first responders. The police officers, the firefighters, and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of other people have been going to work since this thing began. And I think teachers need to come back to work full time next year with fully staffed classes. And if students want to stay home because they don't feel comfortable, then of course we need to make arrangements for them. And I like your idea about having like almost a district-wide or a DOE-wide K-12 remote program. So like there is a K-12, like there is a homeschooling K-12.com. I know that's a company. Does the DOE want to establish something where we have our own kind of homeschooling program? I don't know if that's what you're thinking about, Simeon, or a district-wide thing where that's happening. I'm in for all of that. I believe that kind of curriculum with that kind of expansion of accessibility is like 21st century thinking, and I would love to incorporate that. But the main thing is next year, everyone should be back in school 100% full time and full capacity. That's my personal feeling.
One thought I had, Simeon, I don't think you mentioned anything about the whole assessment question. Do we want to touch that? And how do we test students when they get back or assess students when they're back in school in the fall?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's something else I was definitely thinking about. And I think one of the questions is, do we wait until everybody comes in person? Because I think right now, everybody's really scrambling to figure out how you're going to be administering the state test for remote learning and all these kinds of things. Do you think that we should be doing? I mean, there is testing going on where kids are actually sitting in front of their screen and there are people monitoring them while they're taking the test as a way of, ensuring that there's no cheating going on. So there are ways to do remote testing, but I don't know if anybody has any thoughts about the testing that could be done. I also think the testing has to have very quick turnaround, and the testing needs to be designed for teachers. This is not about accountability. This is about information to help us identify where the gaps are, and for teachers to know who their kids are and what they need. But then the next question is, so you identify a group of kids that are performing, a year behind now. What are you going to do about it? What is this plan to address it? And historically, we've had, many, many kids who are below grade level, and yet we don't have robust intervention programs to really bring them up to speed.
The little bit of reading I've done really seems to point to the intensive tutoring as like one of the most effective, small group one-on-one or one-on-two type things that can be done. Just So I agree with your earlier comment on that for sure.
Simeon, hi, everybody. Sorry I was late. Also, the level of transparency to parents, we seem not to be included in the conversation about going back to school. This seems to always be the case that we're talked to about what's going to happen, and it's usually last minute. And something that we had absolutely no input in. And I would like to see something where parents are effectively consulted, and where there's a level of transparency that's legitimate early on, instead of, okay, here's last week in August, and this is what we're going to do. Which, of course, last week in August is ridiculously late, and we shouldn't be hearing anything that late. So we'd like them to be a little more proactive with very transparent input from parents, I think.
Does anybody have any thoughts about this summer, about what should be available?
Is that related to budget? Are we going to have, are they going to basically tell us how much money they have in order to accomplish anything?
I'm sure that would be the response, but
Yeah.
as far as what do we want, what do we ask for, especially with all the federal money now coming in, I think there's less reason to say we don't have money for things.
Yeah, agree. And I'll repeat it again. I think tutoring is the way to go, as opposed to, if you wanted to tier the things you mentioned, Simeon, like as opposed to keeping the electronic online things available, kids online all summer. I don't know, as opposed to tutoring. To me, that one just seems like the preferred option.
I would say, yeah, of course, in person is preferable, but for kids who, for whatever reason, can't access in-person resources, I agree. I think we should keep it online. I mean, once it's set up, it maintains itself, right? So I don't see why the DOE wouldn't do that. As far as assessments, I think everyone knows how I feel about this, but we shouldn't be assessing children in a pandemic. Not equitable in any stretch of the imagination. And it just seems like common sense that we would use the summer to target these students who have experienced learning loss. And I don't know why we can't use teacher assessments to determine that. I fail to understand, and I fail to be convinced why we need to have some sort of formal standardized test to tell us what teachers already know about their students. I want to believe teachers. So they're doing informal assessments all the time. They can definitely, tell us which students would benefit the most from targeted tutoring. I think that's what you called it. Just in terms of going back, Simeon, you mentioned until the CDC okays the vaccine for children under 16, my child is not going back to school because she has a health condition. I'm just not going to risk it. So I hope personally that the remote option remains until the vaccine is deemed, safe for under 16-year-olds. We forget about teenagers, but they're part of this whole equation too. And they I don't know the data exactly, and I agree with younger children, it seems to be not a risk and worth going back full time. But I think that it remains to be seen for high school kids, especially New York City high school kids that could be traveling, between the boroughs throughout the day. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's so much attention being paid to reopening the schools, but the fact is so many kids are not going to school at all. And so reopening is meaningless for 3/4 of the kids in this district, in this city. Not to mention that reopening doesn't mean full time. There are only, I think, about half of the schools in the district are even able to offer 5 days a week to even a part of their kids. So, even the kids who are in hybrid are still doing remote learning part of the time.
I'd like to touch on what Alice said.
Sorry, Vito. I just want to add quickly, the schools keep closing too. Like, I'm going to touch the elephant in the room. I don't know how many closed last week, but it's not funny. I'm not laughing. But, every time we have a case, it just throws everything into chaos. Okay. And now I'll be quiet. Go ahead, Vito.
No, you don't have to be quiet. 229 is closed. 187 is closed. There's at least one other school is closed.
264 is closed.
4 is closed. So yeah, that's a definite issue. But Alice, as insofar as this, any assessment that we do, the purpose is not to kind of pigeonhole any child, right? So this is assessment is a tool just to see where these children are and where they need to get to. I am fine. I had a great teacher at 229 that was so good with giving assessments and specific exercises and plans of action to work with our child, my child, to get them where they needed to go. That if a teacher would do that or had the tool to do that, that would be fine. But I mean, I don't know if every single teacher is going to give an individual assessment for every child. So I just don't know if that's doable or if it's something that the teachers want to do or will do, or
Right.
that's the only reason that we need to do some kind of a formal assessment.
Maybe that's what we should be looking to try to spend our money hiring extra teachers, because I mean, and I hear what you're saying. They're a tool to see where the children are, where the students are at, and what they need to, you know, what the teachers need to work on with them. However, in practice, it is used as a tool to pigeonhole them, especially if we're talking about using them to get into middle schools. And I mean, for fifth graders, for eighth graders, the stakes are high. Are we doing state testing? How is it going to work? How are we measuring these? I mean, it just seems like, why are we devoting any resources to this at all when there's people in real need, and we have a real opportunity here to figure out how to do education just better, smarter, in the next millennium, you know? Like, you know, okay, I'm done. Thanks.
One other issue I wanted to throw out there is ventilation. And something to think about, if that's something we might all agree on advocating for, is improvement in ventilation, which I think there's research to show is an issue before the pandemic, as far as, you know, low-income people in communities that have a lot of air pollution, et cetera. There's a lot of evidence of the impact that has on asthma and all these kinds of things. And so ventilation in classrooms, I think, could be something that we can focus on, which also might help increase trust for teachers and for students. And so what that means is making sure that all the ventilation systems have good filters, and that classrooms that don't have mechanical ventilation systems have some sort of air filters within the classroom, which, you know, you can actually build them relatively cheaply out of a box fan and a bunch of filters. And they're showing that it circulates and filters the air pretty effectively. And come fall, the weather should be warm enough to keep windows open, you know, for at least a couple of months. So something else we might think about pushing, and, you know, thinking about where the budget money is going to go. There's not a lot of evidence that all the money being spent on disinfectant is that useful, that ventilation might be a better use of money for the future.
Simeon, I agree. If that's possible to get in freestanding ventilation units in each class, that's certainly something that I think would have value. But to think that we are going to retrofit 100-year-old buildings, I think that would cost billions of dollars, and I think that would not be an efficient use of taxpayer money.
Can still call for it. I mean, the SCA would do that, and I think they're doing it on an ongoing basis, right?
They could certainly
When they
direct
can.
resources to the
Yeah.
schools that haven't had any work done on them. I mean, we know that there are areas of the city where the schools are literally just falling apart, crumbling before your eyes. Their ventilation systems certainly are not up to par. So,
Right. And it might be interesting to get information on that for D20 and just understand
Yeah.
where things stand, where things are before we, you know, decide to include it or not include it.
Yeah. Great. Well, I will take that and I'll try to draft something to see if it's something we might all come around to support in our next meeting or two. But definitely, I think I'd like to see the DOE start planning this early. And Adele, I think the transparency and sort of the decision-making timeline should be shared with us immediately, so we know when this stuff is going to be decided instead of August or September.
That sounds great. Awesome. Next item on the agenda is Adele. Do you want to give a quick update, Adele, on the Arts Initiative?
Yes, hi. All right, so we technically rolled it out. Thanks to Superintendent Prado for sending out a PowerPoint explaining to teachers and principals of our district. Alice, I did put you on that email. Alice has joined our committee. And we have an invitation to participate, and the PowerPoint, and then the media release forms that which we have sent out. So I'm going to let that stew a little bit. Already questions coming in. I'm going to clarify. We're having one art mission per grid and one performing arts submission per school that we will be entertaining. And preschool, I said one per class for the preschools. So as questions come in, and then I'll set up another meeting for our committee if anybody else wants to join us. But basically, we have our Google Drive set up, and we'll give it a couple of weeks for people to look at that. And we also have a partner, UFT Family Liaison for the borough, who has asked to participate, and she will be calling the schools to see what particular help they might need or any questions that they might have. So she's going to be acting as a liaison. But we're getting great support from our committee. Our committee includes borough partners and administration. So we're rolling ahead, and I'll give you an update in April. Hopefully, we're getting our submissions in. The website should be up a bit, and if anybody wants to see it or wants to be included in the committee, I will link you as well. Okay, that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Adele.
Okay.
And then the last item on the business agenda, this is something I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention. It was, it's a process that was a resident who's also a teacher in the district brought this to an idea to my attention. And specifically, he was thinking about the need for seats in the district and potential outside the box ways of thinking about finding more space. And he was looking at a park and wondering if the park could be, turned into a school. It's complicated, and I just wanted to bring the process up to everyone and really just get feedback. I'm completely neutral on the idea. It's something that we would have to get involved in as community, our role as community voice, community organizers. Here's the process in brief. It's called Parkland Alienation, and it involves the city of New York. The city council has to come up with a bill, and they have to introduce it at the state level. So yeah, it's complicated, and it requires buy-in from elected officials. And if it gets approved at the state level, then in theory, you can convert the parkland to something else. But then it involves, the whole process is of course highly political. The Parks Department is extremely protective of all its parkland. In certain circumstances, parkland, it must be substituted, acre for acre with new parkland. So that's a separate set of sort of calculations to the process. But ultimately, if the bill gets passed at the state, then the city can turn the land, the parkland, over to another purpose. Again, I wanted to get all your feedback, just sort of general thoughts. It would be something obviously that would outlive us. I mean, it would take much longer than 3 months to get something like this moving. But if there's any just general thoughts about it, the viability, the role the CEC may or may not want to play in something like that, just be curious. I told this resident that I'd follow up with everyone, and that's what I'm doing.
Which park are they thinking? Do they have a park in mind?
Yeah, specifically, it was the tennis courts in Leif Erikson. So
yeah,
there's,
they were going to go for Leif Erikson. There's too much land there, and it's right in the prime real estate spot. Sounds like a lot of work. That's my first.
It's a very political process. We'd have to get, the local council representatives on board to bring it up with the city, and then ultimately introduce it to the state. And so it'd be a big effort. And that's why it really requires, organization, either on the part of parents or residents or us, or, and it requires also assessing what the SCA is doing through its normal channels, because ultimately the SCA would get involved with this, and they gave me a lot of feedback on the process, and they shared with me how complicated it really is. And you guys know they're constantly looking for sites, and I know they're in discussions all the time, and there's things going on that we all don't know about. So
is one of the things about the parkland the situation where I think every, I don't know, something like there needs to be a playground every certain amount of blocks? Is that have we
I don't
That's
know.
like a mayoral dictate. I don't know. It could be something that we could figure out right away. Wouldn't work because I guess it's not a playground, but
Yeah,
it's just the courts. Sorry,
it's,
Vito. Go
it's,
ahead. I know where. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Vito, do you want to go?
Oh, yep. So
Go.
in general, I would be opposed to usurping parkland for this purpose. One of our parents last meeting or one of the meetings, they actually suggested these open cut parkways and transit lines, that those are the things that are like pits with trains running through them or parkways running through them. And I was kind of disappointed that SCA kind of like had no clue that this was a viability thing. Platforms above rail yards, that the entire west side of Manhattan is being built on that. The whole Hudson Yards is built on that. So for the school construction authority to not have any clue that this was a viable option was kind of really telling in my mind. And unfortunately, I was disappointed.
Did they say that, Vito? Because I talked to them about that, and
Okay.
they said that's even more because that gets the MTA involved, and
Yep.
that's they told, in their words, you think it's complicated dealing with the Parks Department.
Yeah.
Just wait, so
then the open cut area that I think it was Rachel was positing is the highway, and I believe that's city property, right? Unless that's national transportation property, I don't know.
Yeah, she
For a
was
fact.
talking about building like an overpass over the Belt Parkway, like the real serene part of the Belt Parkway.
No. I'm
No,
talking
we're
about
talking
the
about-
open cut in the vicinity of McKinley.
287, the highway goes right through the middle of
Yeah,
District 20. There's a big gap in the ground and you could build a platform right over it, have the cars go through under a tunnel. I think it's genius.
Yes, and certainly I think before we take parkland, I think that you could build high schools. I mean, it's a huge area. You could have a huge high school. You could have a pretty darn big middle school or elementary school, whatever you needed right there. And you have access from the streets because it's just the school itself is over the property and the streets are just whatever access you would normally have.
so what about the environmental aspect of being above a highway?
I mean, there are people who are living above highways.
Well, I have a friend who lives
Yep.
on 287 around Kane Street and she can't open her windows.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so
So
I mean,
I agree
I
with that.
know that
Yeah,
the
Alan,
George
absolutely.
Washington Bridge, if you look at the George Washington Bridge, there's a huge residential development right over the FDR where it has access, and that's
Yeah.
going on 50 years.
Yeah.
So
And
I
it
would like
scares
to
the hell
see-
out of me, Vito.
yeah,
What?
That thing, that the toxicity of that. I mean, I know it's completely anecdotal, but do you know how many cases of breast cancer there are? in
I don't know.
County?
Let's see if there's some kind of correlation.
Yeah,
Well,
I would
they-
look at, yeah.
don't they do like an EPA report or anyway on these
You
things?
have
And they
to.
do a soil, I know the soil test at 127 has always come back very toxic.
Always so toxic. Like, don't plant anything. Don't even let your children play in the schoolyard. Toxic.
Yeah, you're not allowed to, when we were doing our planting initiatives, you're not allowed to plant anything into the ground. But breast cancer, I know anecdotally the number of cases of breast cancer, and I know it's anecdotal, but it was always a head scratcher for me. I am so opposed to put anything near the highway with,
And
yeah.
127 predated the highway. Robert Moses put the highway right through that area and
God bless
eminent
him.
domained that whole area. So
So regardless of highway or park, another organization we might want to talk to about teaming up is the community boards, because they're the ones who make zoning decisions.
yes,
I believe they have education committees that maybe we could reach out and have a conversation with them.
does anyone know Lori Willis, the chair of the community board? No? Vito?
and does anybody know what happened to that property on Shore Road and 75th, the beautiful Redemptorist property? That's there.
Sold?
No, it's still advertised. I'd love to know, Steve, if anybody talks to CSA, if they made any headway. I mean, if they're
That'd
arguing
be a
over a
fortune.
price tag
Yeah.
and they're ready to, usurp parkland.
I don't think that they'll tell us anything.
I know.
Done deal.
Or not a done deal, or they walked away. It seems
One of
pretty
our
obvious.
principals is actually the president of the community board, Jane, I believe. I always butcher her name. I'm not even gonna try.
Papatanakis,
Yes.
but not community board 10, community board 11.
Oh, is that true? I thought she was Community Board 10.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
it's Josephine Beckman. I thought she was the AA Josephine Beckman, but maybe she's the chair now. I'm seeing it in the chat. Danielle, the former recording secretary of President's Council, is telling me it's Josephine Beckham at Community Board 10.
Do we
Okay,
overlap with
so
more
where
than
is
one
Jane
community
Community
board?
Board
It could
of?
be at 11. The Bensonhurst Dyker Heights have a different CB.
Yep, so we could
Thank
talk to
you.
both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I don't know where we got here.
Great.
Steve.
I think we're good. Yeah, no, I think we're good. And it's 6:58, so we can take a 2-minute break and motion to adjourn the business meeting.
Second.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, see you back in a couple minutes. Right now?
Is Dylan done?
.02, and I will call the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to CEC 20's March calendar meeting. Thank you for joining us. Before the meeting starts, I want to remind you that this is a public meeting and it is being recorded. The only people who should share their cameras are the superintendent, CEC members, and our guests. Very importantly, I want to also announce that there are Spanish, Arabic, and Mandarin interpreters here tonight working on separate lines. You should see video of these interpreters. Thank you to them for being here with us and providing this important service to our Spanish, Arabic, and Mandarin speaking families. I will now ask the interpreters to introduce themselves. Would our Spanish interpreters please introduce themselves?
Hello, we are the Spanish interpreters. I will now introduce myself in Spanish. Hola, somos sus intérpretes en español. Para poder unirse a la línea de interpretación en español, favor de ingresar el número 1347-966-4114 e ingresen el PIN de conferencia 291-704-219, símbolo de número. Nuevamente, el número para marcar es el número 1347-966-4114 e ingresen el PIN de conferencia 291-704-219, símbolo de número. Si quieren escuchar el audio en español, pero quieren quedarse en esta conferencia virtual, pueden ver la reunión en su computadora. Por favor, pónganse en silencio o bajen el volumen en su computadora e ingresen el número de teléfono para la línea de español, que nuevamente es el 1347-966-4114 e ingresen el PIN de conferencia 291-704-219, símbolo de número. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, could our Arabic interpreter please introduce themselves?
Hi, good evening. This is Heidi. This message is going to be in Arabic to announce the Arabic interpretation. أهلا بكم، مساء الخير. في ترجمة باللغة العربية متوفرة لحضراتكم لو اتصلتوا على رقم التليفون 347-966-4114. بعديها لو سمحتوا عليكم إدخال الرمز 341-954-935. ده الخط اللي بتصلوا بيه حضراتكم لو انتوا عايزين تستمعوا للترجمة باللغة العربية. ممكن تشوفوا الزوم على الاجتماع عادي، ولكن نوطوا الصوت بتاع الزوم بحيث تقدروا تستمعوا من خلال الخطوط بتاعت الترجمة. مرة تانية تقدروا تتصلوا على رقم التليفون 347-966-4114 وبعديها تدخلوا الرمز 341-954-935 وعلامة الشباك. شكرا. Thanks.
And could our Mandarin interpreter introduce themselves?
大家晚上好，欢迎大家参加我们的会议。如果想听中文普通话翻译，请拨打347-966-4114，然后请按密码531-610-726，井号键。再重复一遍，如果需要中文翻译，请拨打347-966-4114，然后请输入密码531-610-726，井号键。如果想听翻译的同时看视频，请按静音键。谢谢。Thank you very much.
Thank you. Because we will have interpretation throughout the meeting, it is important that everyone tries to speak slower than usual to allow the interpreters to keep up. One more logistical item before we officially start, how we will allow for public comment tonight. The last item on the calendar meeting agenda is public comment. This is the opportunity for any attendee to ask questions of the superintendent and/or the council. When it is time for public comment, we will repeat the following instructions. The first way to make public comment, we will take questions and comments from participants who signed up using the form. Please press the hand icon on the bottom of your screen to be recognized at that time, or type your name and the word "speak" in all caps into the chat box. When your name is called, please repeat and spell your first and last name. Second, we will take questions and comments from participants on the language lines. The interpreters will interpret into English. Finally, if you have called in using your phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, and Natalia will manually unmute your line to allow you to speak. And with that, that's the end of the logistical items. We need to take roll call, I realize. So Alice, can you please take roll call?
Steve Stowe, President.
Here.
Dina Gergis, First Vice President.
Here.
Robert Aguilar, Second Vice President.
Here.
Alice Licata, Recording Secretary, Present. Inga Smolyar, Treasurer and Brooklyn Borough President Appointee. Inga, are you with us tonight? I will check in with her later, but looks like she is absent. Alan Aha, IEP rep. He is also absent. He let us know he had a family emergency. Mauricia Cadillo.
Here.
Thank you. Yifang Chen.
Here.
Del Doyle.
Here.
Vito Labella.
Here.
And Simeon Stoltzberg, the other Brooklyn Borough President appointee.
Here, I see Rob on the screen.
Rob is here. He said he was here. It's Alan.
Okay.
Yeah, that's excused. Thank you, everyone.
Right. And then the first item is approval of the February calendar meeting minutes. So Natalia, can you please share those on the screen?
Can I move we approve these minutes or?
Yep. Any second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Minutes are approved. Okay. Okay. The first item of business on the agenda is the Fair Student Funding presentation. Our presenters for the, I just have to, Natalia, can you introduce you have the, you received the names of the individuals, correct?
Yes, so we have Marie Burrow and Pat Payne will be presenting.
Great. Marie and Pat, are they here?
Yes.
Yes, hello. Marie
Okay,
Burrow.
great.
Just a
Welcome.
point of order, are they
Thank
going
you
to
so
take questions or are they going to refuse to answer questions like the presentation last meeting?
Marie and Pat, can you speak to that?
I don't know if you can see me. I
Yep.
hope you can. John
Yes.
Garcia, Director of Finance. I would like to just address that question. Thank you, by the way. It's not that we're not answering questions. We've been directed to direct all questions to a particular website so that we can basically take all of those questions and then address them appropriately. So, again, no disrespect, but if you would like to address them with your respective, superintendent, I have an open door policy with them. So, I just want to be very clear. That is not the intent here. We're trying to be very open, but we have to ascribe to a certain protocol.
So to that point, and this is my 6th year here.
Yep, thank you.
When was this policy enacted and at whose direction and with what input from parents was that made? That this would be the.
So I cannot say who and what and whom. What I can tell you is this is what I have been charged with, to present my team, to present this information, and then we take back the feedback and then we basically adjust any and all information and then we work back with parents.
So that basically there's not one question from us that you could possibly answer.
Today, and without the information, I cannot provide you with full fidelity of justification of an answer unless I can have it. Listen, I'm a parent, by the way, of 2 New York City kids. I'm not going to lie to anyone. I have to give you what I have.
This is an issue, I think for fellow council members, we should let them, Mr. Garcia and his team proceed with the presentation. This is obviously an issue with the way this system is set up.
I just want to be very upfront and very upfront with everyone.
We're aware of this, and maybe this is an issue we should work on as a council and find the right people to push on this, because it is clearly an issue of.
And I can work with you on this, by the way, but if this is not the appropriate forum, to be quite frank.
That's fine. I just wanted to be clear up front so we knew what we were getting into today. Thank you.
Understood. By the way, I have no issue. Again, I am a New York City product, so I'm with you all. I have the same concerns and issues. I can only do what I can do. So I want to be very upfront and honest with all of you. And I appreciate the opportunity to have my team speak with you. So thank you again. And
thank you. This is a very important presentation at an important time, given everything that's going on with the budget. So please proceed with your prepared remarks.
Thank you.
A point of order really quickly. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. I appreciate that you're.
Call me John. No, Mr. Garcia. Oh, that hurts me.
John, I appreciate that there's only so much you can tell us, what you're saying though is that if we have specific questions based on the presentation tonight, we should coordinate with our new superintendent and he will coordinate with you and we'll get an answer if we are deemed worthy of an answer.
You're all worth. No,
Okay.
Let me stop you there.
Well,
You're all
might not be our
worthy.
business, so I'm okay with that.
You're all worthy. I speak with David every day. Sorry, Mr. Superintendent Preto, sorry.
I understand. Okay.
No, you're all worthy. Listen, I'm a parent too. You're all worthy.
I was just saying it might be above our pay grade, but I appreciate your help and that's the procedure. So we look forward to the presentation.
Yes, and John, if I could cut in, there is both a website and a phone number at the end of the presentation. that you can address your questions
Okay.
to. And that's the forum for questions.
Definitely.
This is Pat Payne, by the way.
And it's so nice to have you here. I've had so many emails and seen your name.
Pat is
I
amazing, by
know.
the way. She's Senior Grants Officer Extraordinaire. Amazing. I've known her 17.
That's
sorry,
very
Pat.
kind of you.
I don't want to
Thank
say
you.
17 years, but I've known Pat 17 years.
There you go.
Listen, honestly, we are here to help you. We are parents too. We are people within, you know, this institution. We are not here to show you that we are part of the machine. What we are saying is, you know, let's all have an open and honest discourse.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Well, we're
please
not calling it
proceed.
discourse, though. It's a presentation. Let's call it what it
Oh,
is.
oh,
Discourse
okay.
requires.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Oh, that hurt me a little. That hurt me, but I'll take it. That's fair.
Please proceed,
Okay.
Mr. Pat.
Maria, are
Yeah,
you on?
it's-
Maria, are you on?
Yes, I am on, but I just wanted to ask if either Pat or John, is it possible for you to share the PowerPoint presentation?
All right, I'll see if I can do that for you right now.
Thank
Give me 1 second. I hope you guys can't see me trying to do this because we just found out last night we were doing this, by the way. Just please afford me certain liberties. No, this is not working. Apologies. I'm normally doing Teams, so forgive me with the Zoom.
Okay, I didn't have you listed as co-host, so it should be able to work now.
Thank you for allowing me to join, by the way. And I do want to thank, by the way, Superintendent Pareto, thank you for inviting us. This is, to me, it's a great opportunity to talk to our constituents. So, you know, this is nothing that I am averse to. So thank you very much. I really appreciate this.
I appreciate you coming and the whole team.
Thank you. Oh, wait, I'm not on video, right?
Now
All
you're
right, David, don't make a comment that I'm wearing the same shirt as earlier today, but that's okay.
Listen, I wasn't going to say anything.
But no, honestly, thank you. I truly appreciate the opportunity to support you and to speak with the community, and because I need this feedback so that I can go back to OFDC and to Central and say, hey, here's what we're hearing at the ground level. So I'm with you. I am in concert with you and hand in hand. So thank you very much.
I appreciate that, John. Thanks so much.
Marie, can you share your screen, or am I still like?
No, I think permission was given, but
Right.
it's still not allowing me the access to share.
So basically, I still gotta talk, and you know, all right. I don't know any more jokes. Damn. Okay. Anybody else? I'm asking for help here. Technical difficulty. Where's my 13-year-old kid who's my tech support when I need them?
Can you email it to Natalia and she post it?
Oh, that's what. No, I was literally saying my 13-year-old kid who's my tech support. Like they're the one who helps me.
Can you,
But Natalia, if you can do it. I mean, Marie can talk. She sounds wonderful, but we want to make sure that you see what it is we're talking about.
I'm sending it to Natalia.
Thank you. By the way, apologies if I don't refer to everyone with the right name, because some of the names look odd. They're like D20 and then there's a name at the end. So apologies if I don't refer to you in the right name. You can call me John, by the way.
John, maybe someone can give a preamble of what this presentation is, just to set up our, maybe one of your, while you're working that out, someone can tell us.
Sure.
So,
everybody
so
what it's about.
essentially what we're talking about is the fair student funding allocation to schools based on grade weight, which, well, maybe you may or not know, is the articulation grade. So for example, the elementary, middle, and high school weights. And then of course you have the AIS, the MLS, the MLs, excuse me, that has now been newly designated, and the students with disabilities, which go to the second round. So what we're talking about essentially is now the new register projections and how schools are funded, because obviously during COVID, everything has changed. So we just want individuals to be, to understand how schools are funded. The methodology hasn't changed. It's just the mathematical methodology for this year because of COVID. Because to be quite frank, it's different, and we've never experienced anything like, well, at least not in my lifetime, my 52 years. I shouldn't have said I'm 52, but in my 52 years, I've never experienced this. So, again, I'm the director of finance and HR. We look out for schools. We work for you. We work hand in hand with the superintendent. I am not a part of the machine. I am here to be with you. Like I said, I went to public school. My kids go to public schools. I'm sure all of your, or most of your kids do too. So, I thank you for this opportunity and welcome you to have the opportunity for this discourse so that I can understand your concerns and we can try to come to some common ground in terms of what it is that we can do to better the system. So I appreciate all of you and all of your feedback. So I welcome you and I thank you. And again, especially I want to thank Superintendent Preto for inviting, and I know I'm saying it in Spanish, which is probably wrong, but that's just the way I speak. Superintendent Preto, thank you. I appreciate you inviting me to come here to be on this call, and I appreciate that. And then you and I obviously, will speak afterwards. But everyone, I've been doing CEC meetings for years, so thank all of you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here, John.
I used to have less gray hair, by the way, back then, but
John, is there any, I don't know how close we are to getting the presentation up, but I was listening to the CFO, Lindsay Oakes, right? Last Friday, and in her comments, I believe she probably was using the same presentation you're about to use, but her comments about sort of school finances directly tie into what you're about to talk about. And, I don't know if it's worth repeating any of her sort of main points about what the DOE has done this year and how fair student funding fits into that from sort of a high level, just so we can all maybe start working through the topic a little bit before the PowerPoint gets up.
And understood. I guess the best way to frame this is to showcase the overall expenses across the board, because to be quite frank, people think, oh, it's only teachers, it's only principals, it's only F-status, it's only per diem, but it's not that. We have many other expenses that we need to pay for in terms of facilities, for example, pensions, for example, and you'll see that in the presentation. I don't want to misinterpret anything, but there are many issues that configure what it is that we need to pay, and then it gives you a clearer picture of what it is that we do on a daily basis. So it's like I told people, I said, listen, I'm not Jesus, I don't do miracles, I work magic. I can make 1 + 1 = 3, depends on the day it is. And I'm joking, by the way, please don't hold me to that. Thank you for laughing, Dave. Stephen, thank you for laughing. You're the first person to laugh at that. Thank you for laughing. No, but all jokes aside. Thank you. But what we do is, we do the best that we can for students. Like I told you, I'm a product of New York, City High School. My children go to New York City public schools. I'm assuming my grandkids are going to go there. I am very serious about what I do. And, I don't live in a district that is, let's just say, people want to come to. I don't know how to put it politely. Let's just, I'm going to be honest with it. I'm a working class person like the rest of you, I'm assuming. And what I'd like to present today is my people to show you what it is that we do on a daily basis in terms of the DOE providing funding. And then offline, we can talk based on what you discussed with, Superintendent Preto, we can discuss how can we try to help schools. And by the way, I am all for doing anything I can to support my schools. But, I will leave the rest to you because I don't want to talk too much because David's going to smack me in the head.
Well, and I think everyone, it's Marie Burrow. I think everyone was sharing the screen now. So thank you so much, Natalia. And I want to say good evening, everyone. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to give this presentation on school budgets for the upcoming school year 2021-22. Natalia, if we can go to the next slide, please. Let me get my slide in place. Thank you. So we'll start with where does funding come from? So the DOE is funded by city, state, and federal dollars, which combine to support our $34 billion budget. New York City provides the most of this funding. For the 2020-2021 school year, the city will contribute $19.6 billion or 57% of our total budget. And most of this funding comes from the city, which we call city tax levy dollars. And these city tax levy funds are drawn from local taxes, including property taxes, sales tax, and personal income taxes. Every year, the mayor proposes the amount of city tax levy funding we get, and the city council must pass the budget into law. The New York State is the second largest source of funding. For the 2020-2021 school year, you'll see the state will contribute $12.3 billion or 36% of our total budget. The state gets its funding mainly from income and sales taxes. Every year, the governor proposes the amount of state funding that we will get, mainly based on the number and types of students enrolled in our schools. And then the state legislature must pass the budget into law. The federal government is our third largest source of funding. For the 2020-2021 school year, the federal government will contribute $2.1 billion or 6% of our total budget. The federal government gets its funding mainly from income taxes. And every year, Congress proposes a budget and the president must sign the budget into law. The Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, provides the rules for allocating most of the federal funding that we receive. Next slide, please. So where does our funding go? The $34 billion budget provides for the daily instruction and support of over 1 million students every day. As you see from the orange part of our pie chart, district and school budgets or allocations to schools is the largest portion. And this includes all dollars given directly to district schools, in addition to the associated fringe and pension costs. Under the oversight of principals and superintendents, these budgets are put together within the schools. And school budgets are used for all instructional expenses at the DOE. $18 billion in school budgets pays for costs such as salaries and benefits for classroom teachers, classroom paraprofessionals, principals, assistant principals, and deans, and other classroom and school-based staff. This also includes funding for textbooks, computers, materials, and supplies. Next, we have the non-instructional costs, or food, transportation, and debt payments. And this includes free breakfast and lunch available to all students, bus routes, loan payments on buildings, the new constructions, renovations, or things that are similar to a mortgage payment. Another portion would be funds to non-district schools, such as the charters, non-public schools, and students with disabilities attending specialized non-Department of Education schools. Additionally, we have support costs, such as custodial expenses, facilities maintenance, and central academic supports. Next slide, thank you. Funds allocated to schools are under the responsibility of each principal, and the principals, along with their school leadership teams, create the school's comprehensive educational plan based on specific instructional needs and priorities. Principals work with their SLTs to create the school budgets to pay for the instructional programs that are detailed in those CEPs. Superintendents supervise the principals in this process and must approve all school budgets and their alignment with the school's CEP. Slide, please. The majority of school budgets are allocated through fair student funding, or as we call it most often, it's FSF. Under FSF, we create a school's budget based on the individual needs of each student enrolled there. Each school's fair student funding allocation is calculated based on the number of students enrolled at each school and the specific needs of those students. The budgeting method is called a weighted pupil funding model. Pupil needs are weighted based on the cost of meeting those educational needs. In addition to the $10 billion that is allocated through Fair Student Funding, we also have an additional $8 billion in federal, state, and local funding distributed to schools through School Allocation Memorandum. The DOE has approximately 100 of these memorandums detailing how those funds are allocated to schools and give a description of the background, their purpose, and their source, and how they should be used. On the DOE's Info Hub, you can find a full list of those additional school allocation memorandum. Slide, please. Thank you. Fair Student Funding provides for each school's primary instructional program and services. Over 90% of Fair Student Funding supports classroom staff and instructional supports for students. These are things such as their classroom teachers, including art, gym, cluster, quota, and coverage teachers, teacher absence coverage, pupil support such as guidance, after-school programs, tutoring, intervention, as well as school leadership and administrative support. In addition, OTPS, which is our acronym for other than these personnel services, so supplies and materials would be included. While other non-Fair Student Funding allocations can provide for specific programs, including speech, counseling, 3K, and pre-K. Slide. Slide, Natalia. Oh, thank you so much. These are the proposed weights to determine Fair Student Funding for 2021-22. And each school will be funded based on their student population. Individual students may be funded by multiple weights, depending upon those students' needs. The basic grade weight, as we see at the top, is allocated to schools for all students on their audited October 31st register and is aligned to instructional requirements by student grade level with distinct weights for grades K through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. The additional weights that a student may receive include academic intervention. And as you can see from this chart, it is broken down by grade level and needs and level of service. Special education follows that same pattern. English language learners and portfolio high schools, which is an additional weight given to those career and technical programs that require additional coursework. Slide. How the FS weights work. So we see an example above of two students. We have Sam and Alex. Both students are elementary school students. That means they're both entitled to the K through 5 grade weight, which is 1.0. You can see that in the orange part of the graph. If they were middle school students or if they were high school students, the weight would be equivalent to that middle school weight and the high school weight that we saw on the previous page. In addition, both students are English language learners. We can see those weights that are added to the funding in green. Notice that there is a difference. That difference, as referenced on the page before, the chart before, showed that by having or requiring a different level of service, there was a different level of funding or a different weight associated with those needs. So Sam is receiving 0.40 of the weight and Alex 0.44. In a similar manner, the weights that they are receiving for special education services, I apologize for that, are different, where 0.56 has been given for Sam, who requires less specialized services throughout his school program for the week, and Alex, who is receiving more services, and there is a weight of 1.25. Last, we see the small blue allocation of 0.12, where they both receive the same, and that is the academic intervention weight, and that was determined based upon their grade level. And so that did not change. There is no difference from one student to the next. They would both receive the same weight for that academic intervention service. Slide. In FY 2021, New York State will provide New York City with $1.9 billion less than their obligation under the Campaign for Fiscal Equity ruling. The CFE ruling determined that New York State was not meeting its constitutional requirements in funding public schools, and the state agreed to phase in additional funding to New York City schools over 4 years. During the recession, New York State walked away from this obligation. This year, the Department of Education will receive $1.9 billion less than its CFE mandated level from the state. In fact, FY 2021, New York City Department of Education state aid was reduced by $717 million, and federal CARES Act funding was substituted in its place, resulting in no net benefit to New York City Department of Education from federal stimulus funding. Without additional state support, New York City cannot provide each school with 100% of the Fair Student Funding obligation. Despite this funding shortfall, New York City has made significant investments in order to maintain services for students through the COVID-19 crisis. Over 450,000 Department of Education funded devices have been purchased and issued to students. There are currently 450 Learning Bridges programs citywide, providing free childcare for children from 3K through 8th grade, with the capacity to serve nearly 44,000 students. That number continues to increase as we expand seats across all 5 boroughs. Additionally, the Department of Education invested significant new funding in support school reopening, which included $80 million directly to school budgets to fund staffing needs associated with programming in-person and remote learning models, $10 million in planning grants to help schools prepare for the new school year, $50 million in cleaning supplies and PPE, and $22 million for ventilation repairs, air purifiers, and partitions to support safety in our school buildings. School budget timeline. So between February and April that time period is based on initial budget estimates of city and state revenue. The DOE presents the CEC with the proposed fair student funding weights for the coming school year. The presentation tonight serves to advise CECs and school district communities of the formulas and if there are any proposed changes. This presentation is also posted in the DOE website. There's the link there, and it is available on that DOE website. From April through May, the panel for education policy votes on the proposed fair student funding weights for the coming school year. In late spring, the DOE releases budget allocations to schools. In June, principals, along with their school leadership teams, propose budgets for the coming year. July, superintendents must certify alignment between school budgets and comprehensive educational plans for the coming year. In September, our new school year begins. Slide. So this next slide talks about where you're able to find more detailed information on the broader scale through the DOE Info Hub, as well as through school individual web pages. And as you see from the second main bullet, under a school's webpage, you're able to go to reports, budget, and finances, where you can find detailed information of a school's budget based on the different types of funding sources they receive, as well as detailed information about how the principal has budgeted for the current school year, including the number of staff positions and other planned spending. There's the next slide, if you will, Natalia, gives the contact phone number as well as email address for additional questions or feedback. So I thank you for allowing me this opportunity to give this presentation this evening.
I just want to say thank you, Marie.
You're welcome, John.
Such a comprehensive presentation, and I really appreciate on such short notice you doing this. So again, I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you.
My pleasure. You're welcome.
I just want to, yeah, and I guess, should we have a chance now? I think I heard, if I heard correctly, John, your comments, you're happy to hear feedback at this point.
Of course.
From council members, right?
To be honest, though, it has to be official in the email. You can give it to me and Superintendent Preto. I know I keep saying Preto. Is it? I'm sorry, Dave. I'm killing you with your name. Superintendent Preto.
It's okay.
And,
It
you know,
was,
again, it's just so we can take the feedback back and hopefully we can, you know, maybe change protocols or things will adjust. But
Sure.
to be
Well-
honest, the official protocol and process is to send it to the email. But obviously, if you want to say something to me or to the superintendent, I am more than happy to take down whatever concerns you have. I am not averse to listening.
Sure, no
And
problem. So-
would you mind
Yeah.
just posting it in the chat for the parents so that they can still have it once I stop the share?
Thank you. Thank you. I'll tell you what, why don't you guys post it in the chat? See, first of all, it says D20. So I can't even say your name.
That's Natalia.
I know it's Natalia. I'm just saying it says D20. But thank you. No, listen, I am not averse to taking any and all questions. I sat through the whole thing, even your first part, which wasn't even ours. I am here. I'm here for you. I'm listening. I want to be a thought partner. I am here with, you know, Superintendent Preto también to be here to see what we can do together to make things better for our schools. So give it to
Great.
me.
Thank
Steve,
you,
do you
John.
mind if I ask, I'm
Go ahead,
gonna
Val.
get stumble over this word, ask questions, because that would be my tendency. So let's move past semantics and say, let me express some not concerns. Oh God, you've destroyed me, John. I don't know what to call it. Let me
Sorry.
just go forward. So it shows that it has 34 billion. I guess if I got that right, 34 billion as the
Yes.
I'm curious, and it's coming out as a question, but you can do what you want with it. How does this compare to last year's? What's our shortfall? In other words, what was our increase 34 billion? I don't know if that's an innocuous question, but
No,
I'd
it's
like-
not an innocuous question. I think it's a legitimate question. We would have to look back at last year's. To be honest, I don't have it in front of me. So, you know, I
Okay.
don't want to give you a false answer or false positive. What I will tell you is clearly things are different than last year, given the fact that we've had so many individuals leave in terms of registers.
Yes,
students,
yes.
is what I'm saying. So, you know, in terms of the money, so if you think about, and again, I'm going to talk to you as a parent, not as a DOE person, which is probably not proper because I'm being recorded, but you know, monies are being levied in terms of tax levy for, you know, landlords. If people can't pay their rent, if people don't have their children, I can tell you personally, I know people who are sending children down south. So the numbers are going to be skewed. I cannot
Yeah.
tell you this versus last year. I will get you that though. I will
Okay,
write that
all right.
down.
And
And I
so-
will promise you
Yeah.
that we will get that.
Why don't I, and so just to land, that's where I'm going. And my biggest concern come October, when principals have to hold their registers to account, are our schools going to be penalized even further for the shortfall of students that we have?
No, so actually, so the good thing is this year with the projections, there was an actual, and forgive me, I don't have my notes in front of me. There was a term, essentially, I don't want to say forgiven. I'm trying to think of a proper word that I could, a proper English word that I could use. Essentially, we
A
understood.
restoration. It was a restoration.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I'm trying to
You're
think of a really proper word. Thank you. There was a restoration of registers vis-a-vis, given the fact that we understood last year. To be honest, this was an anomaly. No one's ever seen this before, ever, in, you know, basically in our existence. And what we tried to do was not hold schools harmless in terms of paying back exorbitant amounts because students left. We did recognize that, listen, you know, kids were there and then they left, and then we did understand, and, you know, they had family issues and whatever in terms of, you know, families not being able to have jobs and to move out. So there was a factor that was built in. So this was one year that I was very happy at, to be frank, as a financial person, to go, oh, there was a factor that actually helped everyone. I
Was
can't
it an
tell you.
effective factor, do you think? Or is it just, you know, here, let's throw some money at this? Do you think it
I'm
was?
sorry, I didn't hear the first part. I'm sorry.
Sorry, would principals agree that this was an effective factor? In other words, that, yeah, a factor may be applied, but do you think, and I see how on the basis that we see our principals that how they struggle with their budgets to begin with, and then the panic that sets in when they project and it's not enough to cover their budget. So do
I
you
guess-
think, is it
I guess
effective?
I guess my best answer would be, there could have been no factor. So what would be your answer? No, I'm being honest.
I agree, John.
I'm
I
talking as a
understand.
math person.
I don't want to
Listen,
take too
1
much of your
plus
time.
1
I
equals
just,
2 to me.
I
So
have
I'm
two
being
more
honest with you. We
I,
could have had
I
no
understand
factor.
that. All right, and I'll let somebody else cover that. I just have two more really quick questions. One, the stimulus funding. I know it was touched upon, but I see the stimulus funding continuing to roll in. Is a possibility that we're going to have a larger projected budget? Are we going to see the legitimate amount of that money coming in from federal stimulus?
I can't speak on things that are above my pay grade that I have
Okay.
no consequence with. So
I'll
I'm
leave
being
it-
honest, like I can't speak on those things.
Okay, and then the last question I had is something that keeps going back and forth, and we keep hearing about specialized high schools and GNT getting an unfair proportion of money in this fair funding formula. Can you tell us definitively, do specialized high schools get a percentage of money, and just gifted and talented get a percentage of money built into the fair factor formula?
So they get, it's all public, by the way. It's on the DOE website. So just so you know, they get a per capita based on student designation like everyone else. So that's the best I can say. I'm not going to expand on that because then I'd be lying. What I will tell you is every student gets a per capita based on student designation. What I would invite you to do is visit the DOE website. And if you want to have an offline conversation, I am more than, and I'm sorry, AJ?
Adele, it's Adele.
Adele, I am more than happy to have an offline conversation, but officially all I can say is, you know, there are official designations of students. Like I said, you know, when you come in, you get the grade weight, then you get the AIS, you get the SWD, you get the ML, and then if you're in the specialized school or specialized program, I cannot tell you with full fidelity what I believe or don't believe about how it works. It is what it is.
All right, I got you. Thanks, John. I appreciate it. Okay.
You got it. Listen, I don't lie, I don't steal, I don't cheat. 3 things everybody knows about me.
Thanks, John. I won't shoot the messenger. All good.
John,
And I love working with Dave, by the way. Dave and me are best friends.
John, I just want to ask 2 quick questions. One is the restoration that's being discussed. I just want to clarify that's a 25% restoration, right? So the schools are being held harmless for 25% of register loss. Is that correct?
So I have to be a bit non-committal here. What I will say is officially, I can only ascribe to what the Department of Education is officially putting out. What I will tell you is, yes, schools are being held harmless because there is a clear understanding of the register that have been lost. So that's what I can tell you. Sorry, I mean, I don't mean, sorry, Stephen, I don't mean to be, you know, non-committal, but I don't want to speak out of turn.
No worries. And then just on the weightings, I noticed on the presentation, and I heard CFO Oaks talk about this. How often do these change? You know, this is something that in the presentation it says in theory we can provide feedback on the weightings with the idea that, you know, we could recommend changes to them. Have you ever seen these weightings change in your career?
When you say, and forgive me, I'm being honest, when you say weightings change, you mean weightings based on designation, like SWDs, MLs? So what I've seen is it has been consistent for the last couple of years. It has changed. I want to say in my 17 years, it changed. Oh my goodness, maybe, I'm dating myself. What, maybe 10 years ago, but it was based on programmatic changes based on student data. So I cannot sit here and tell you, yes, it will be changed. I don't have that information. I don't have that facility. I cannot tell you with full fidelity. What I can tell you, it is based on how students come in. It has been very consistent for the last, you know, to my knowledge, I've been 17 years in the business. I want to say for the last 10 years, it has been consistent. You know,
Great.
so I honestly, I can't with full fidelity give you an answer because I don't have first of all, I don't have an opinion. That's number one. Number two, I can't give you something without information I can't have. So I apologize.
No, that's all I was looking for. I just wanted to get some context, like the history, understand the history. Because if we're going to look at this and study this and think about it and maybe come up with recommendations, you know, we have to know if it's worth doing, basically, and you know how likely it is that we could
And I think that's wonderful, by the way. Again, as a
Yeah.
parent of New York City students, I am all for this. What I can't, by the way, I'm also a community board member. So, you know, I have to have certain proclivities. I have to be careful. So, and I think it was the other Stephen who was on there. I can't see him now. I think he should be a community board member also, by the way. Wait, he just laughed. He did.
Me, Simeon?
Simeon, thank you. Simeon, you should be a community board member, by the way. I am a member of CB7, 8 years. Sorry, guys, non sequitur, but big deal. So I am a community board member. I do, you know, with my fraternity. So yes, I think if you guys believe, then do it. Simeon, get with your community board.
All right, well, that's enough. So here's my feedback, which is I am a big fan of weighted formulas for funding schools. I think it's a fair way to do things. I think we can always quibble about what the weights are relative to each other, but I think this is a way. What the presentation didn't say anything about is whether there's any hold harmless provisions still built into the system. Can anybody just nod yes or no that hold harmless still exists in the system?
So it does, in the extent that when people transfer, so hold harmless is nothing more than basically fake money before. So let's say, Simeon, you go to, you know, school 1, 2, 3. I'm making this up. The hold harmless is to hold that place for you to move. The issue is, when do you move? When do you move me? That's it. So hold harmless, a lot of people think it's like fake money. It's like, it's actually not. It's nothing more than a placeholder to move you on. I would love, by the way, Simeon, to have a conversation and maybe a cup of coffee with you offline, because you look like somebody I would love to have a conversation with. See, you're smiling, No, but seriously, hold harmless is nothing more than a placeholder of when we move staff. It is not fake money. It's like CFES.
Just here's my feedback about hold harmless is that,
I love this, by the way. I love this conversation.
So in some systems, hold harmless is basically a way politically not to take money away from schools that might lose money because their kids are not as needy as other schools.
No, I disagree. Hold harmless is nothing more than to say, you know, you are moved. Stephen is moving from school 1 to school 2. That's what hold harmless is for. Nothing more, meaning the money that we have to apply to your position back.
Okay.
Hold harmless is not fake money. It's literally a holding place. So to be clear, it is not something we apportion to every school. It is literally on a school by school basis based on transactions. So I just want to be very clear about that.
My concern about hold harmless, that kind of policy, is that if you have, and we tend to have this, that more experienced teachers work in less needy schools. And so if you have more experienced teachers who are more expensive moving to a less needy school, and the hold harmless is traveling money to that less needy school as a result, I think that's problematic. The whole idea of hold harmless, fair student funding and weighting is to give schools the amount of money based on the needs of their kids, not the cost of their teachers.
So here's what I would ask you. Would you, you know, Simeon and John, would you besmirch me leaving school A for school B? It doesn't matter what I cost. It shouldn't matter the cost of my salary. That's what hold harmless is. That's what I'm trying to explain. That's what hold harmless is. So basically, it gives teachers the ability to move within schools. Again, I'm not disagreeing with you, by the way. I'm a parent. I understand where you're going with this. We're going to have a cup of coffee. But what I'm saying to you is you cannot apply hold harmless that way. Hold harmless does nothing more than just put a placeholder for the individual that moves so that the school is not held in financial difficulty. To be clear, hold harmless is nothing more than a placeholder to ensure that the school is not held in financial difficulty. Now, the choice of the individual, you and I can have wonderful conversations about it, which, by the way, I know you and I are going to have a couple of, because I can see you smile. And we're going to, and wait, Elise is laughing too. We probably got to have a cup of coffee too. No, so to be honest, again, listen, I've done this 17 years. I'm a parent. I get it. But hold harmless is nothing more than saying you don't have to pay that, and I'm going to make this up, that $100,000 because Simeon left and we're putting Marie there. We're going to basically put it back. Now, it doesn't matter that Marie went to a school that the average teacher salary was $85,000. It doesn't matter. We need to equalize. So that's what hold harmless is. It is not to help a school get out of financial difficulty is literally to equalize. So I just want to be very clear with that. All it is moving one from the other. And Marie, jump in if you think, you know, by the way, I love when my people jump in and tell me I'm wrong. You know, see, she's laughing.
Yeah, I do just want to add that the mechanism we use when we use hold harmless, it's also temporary.
And
It's
I
to
jump
free
on you
up those-
guys. And I jump on you guys.
So it's only temporary. So we're not holding the school that the teacher is in where they've tied up this position while we just work on the technical piece of moving that teacher into their new position somewhere else. So we don't have to wait for
Right.
the red tape, the transactions. We freed up that money so that the home school can move forward with filling the position or otherwise, you know, rescheduling their budget. So
By
it
the
is
way-
temporary. No one
by the
sits
way,
with hold
Simeon,
harmless for the year.
One sugar, just a little bit of what do you call it? A little bit of milk.
Great, thank you.
We're gonna have coffee.
Sounds good.
I mean that in a good way.
Sounds good, John. Thank you so much. And I think in the interest of time, I'd like to move along here, but John, Marie,
No,
Pat,
thank you
so
guys.
much.
Thank you all.
Thank you guys for inviting us. I really appreciate this. And I'm not joking when I say I really appreciate all of the feedback. And Simeon, we're definitely having some coffee, man. Take care.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
So the next up on the agenda is proposal of a bylaw amendment. And Natalia, could you share that that PDF? This is the social media policy for the bylaws. And while she shares that, I'll just sort of outline the procedure that we're going through. A couple months ago, we formed a social media committee. The committee's first task was to come up with some kind of social media guidelines that could be incorporated into our bylaws if decided, subject to the vote of the council. The procedure for doing this involves, well, we've had several meetings up to this point. We've come up with a draft we've had a couple of discussions with the whole council on it. And now the procedure is to introduce it at this meeting for a vote in the April meeting. So this is to nothing more than introducing it, and we will have a brief discussion on it. Amendments can be proposed for the subject to the council approval to be included in the final version that will be voted on at the April meeting. And I've circulated this. I circulated a previous version of this. I've circulated this one earlier today, and so members can also take a look at it right now. I'll read it out aloud, actually, just to make sure that we're all in the same, we're all aware of what's in here. The Community Education Council of District 20 maintains a social media presence as a means of communication with the families and schools of District 20. Social media account content should relate to the promotion and support of the educational needs of the students of District 20. All social media accounts shall be registered using the CEC 20's email address and contact information, not an individual CEC 20 member's or administrative assistant's email address or contact information. Members maintaining personal social media sites are asked to adhere to New York City DOE social media guidelines, including prohibiting any representation that their personal website represents the viewpoint of CEC 20. The administrative assistant is the primary administrator of the accounts, is the sole party responsible for posting content, and is entrusted with maintaining login information. No approval is required to post content from the New York City Department of Education and New York State Education Department. All other content is subject to the approval of CEC 20 with a quorum required to approve. Any content not from an approved source will be removed by the AA or a member with login rights. This may include content deemed offensive, including but not limited to ethnic or racial epithets, personal attacks, profanity, or inflammatory language. Any content removal decision made by the administrative assistant or any member with login rights may be appealed with a quorum of CEC 20 required to overturn. So would any members like to propose any amendments? And otherwise we will consider the the proposed bylaw amendment introduced and the process for the month-long process for public comment to have begun.
Alice's hands up.
Go ahead, Alice.
Okay, just a point of order, when we reference the New York City DOE social media guidelines update 2016, if we could include a link there. I know it's not hyperlinked and it's in our bylaws, but just so it's like, I don't know, maybe available so people.
Sure. I mean, yeah,
I don't know how useful it'll be because but this will also be on our website, right? So people could link and kind of see, does this cross the line, just in case any
right.
public was interested in that. And the second paragraph, I would like to take out inflammatory language. I think that is up to interpretation. And I think including but not limited to ethnic or racial epithets, personal attacks, or profanity kind of covers our bases. I think, listen, some people think saying Black Lives Matter is inflammatory. Some people think saying, I don't know, something else would be inflammatory. I think it's just too open to interpretation. So if we could just put a period after profanity, I would propose that amendment. So personal attacks or profanity, period. And then just something to consider, not that we ever want Natalia to go anywhere, but there are times that CECs do not have administrative assistants. And what then? This does not address that at all. And if our purpose is to create a sort of guideline for future CECs, it gives them no guidance.
Yeah, Alice, would you like to propose anything there?
I mean, I guess it would go, I would recommend that it would go to then, the 3 officers, right? Or maybe all 5 officers, because there's 5 officers and there's a tiebreaker, right?
Yeah. One thing that has intentionally been done here, for example, on the login information, it's been intentionally left. Part of the intent here was to make something relatively concise. And so I think it's,
and I agree. I don't know that there's a good answer for it. I just know that, and I hope that it never happens. Natalia is amazing. But if it were to, it really leaves the CEC in a bind. I speak from experience. And, it just might be something to consider, trying to, give an option for if you don't have a DOE employee to manage the account. But I'm also just raining on your parade. So sorry.
No, it's not. It's all good.
But I would like to take out the inflammatory language. I think it's too open to interpretation. So I propose that amendment. I move to make that amendment.
Can we ask for clarification what Steve means in his chat?
Yeah, that's great. I agree. I saw that too.
Yeah, I mean, you could just I agree with Alice though, putting something in for when you don't have an AA is important. I have a council that
you don't have an AA, not
yeah,
when.
if you don't, I mean, it happens,
Right,
unfortunately.
yes, I know, right.
I'm working with another council that is missing an AA. And they have a similar provision and they didn't put something in. So now they can't post anything on the website because only the AA can do it. But since the only thing that the AA can post is approved items, you can just have 1 or 2 officers put in here that can post the approved items and everything else is posted by a vote. So, yeah.
Well, and I think the 3 officers, we have login rights, right? So, or is it just me and you, Steve, and maybe Inga too? I don't know.
Yeah, I would pass it to maybe 1 person, 2 people. Like it's just to administer and put stuff up from the Department of Education and the State Department of Ed.
Right.
Like there's no vetting or voting process other than the full council.
Right. Which is basically what this says right now, right, Steve?
Okay. And I just, like what you said, include who's going to do it if there is an AA.
Right. And I think it makes sense to have president and or recording secretary just by the nature of the roles. And then, if
yeah, maybe like the 3, it's the question of either the 3 or the 5. I'd like to, keep it to 3 possibly. It's just.
I agree.
We did used to have a social media. Katie remember Katie, Alice?
Yeah, I remember she was the recording secretary, but I think she was the chair of that committee when we were pretending we had that committee.
Right.
So
But I did miss her when she left, but it was.
I miss Katie already. To
Yeah.
this day, I miss Katie. I wouldn't be here.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Steve, if I hear you right, just add a line basically clarifying who steps in when the AA is unable to.
Yeah,
Okay.
otherwise you could just be locked out until you hire an AA.
Right.
And then I guess procedurally, to Alice's, Alice would like to raise the issue of the inflammatory language line. So Alice, you're proposing an amendment, correct?
Yes, I'm proposing that we amend the sentence that says this may include content deemed offensive, including but not limited to, and we just say personal attacks or profanity, period. And we just take out inflammatory language again, because it just can be, everyone's definition is different.
So should
That's
we
agreeable. It's redundant too.
make a motion
Offensive.
to make a motion to approve the amendment?
Second.
And all in favor of removing inflammatory language?
Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed? None opposed. So the motion passes. We will remove inflammatory language.
Mhm. And then do we need to specifically say the sentence that we're adding in about the AA? So that we. 'cause,
Yes, we do.
right,
Correct.
We
Yep.
need to have that language.
Correct. So is there a motion to add that sentence?
And what sentence would that be, Stephen?
The sentence would read, good. Adele, you're definitely not an easy A in your classes, are you?
No, I'm horrible.
So I would propose a sentence that reads, if the AA is unable to perform these responsibilities shall be performed by the president, the recording secretary, or the treasurer. Is there a second to approve that line as an amendment?
Can we just change the first few words to if there is no administrative assistant, or if CEC 20 does not have an administrative assistant, rather than not able to do it? Because it's just a matter of whether we have an employee or not.
But if we have an employee who's sick or unable to do something, then somebody needs to delegate to do it.
Okay, whatever Steve said then.
That also then I infer then that those people have to have login access to the site. The way it reads now, it says only the AA is entrusted with maintaining login information.
Yeah, and it's sort of, I thought about this too. It's sort of implicit here because later on we refer to any member with login rights. And I intentionally didn't specify because I know we don't have a formal policy on that. And I didn't want to get into that here, just outlining a whole nother set of formal policies. And so I just intentionally left that as one way to write the sentence might be, if unable to perform the responsibilities, any member with login rights
right
is
But
thereby
who has login rights, I think needs to be specified.
If we think that would be a separate amendment, I intentionally left it out just because I want every council to sort of have the authority to do what they like there, and I didn't. But again, we could propose that as an amendment as well, or add that onto here. So I like keeping it out. So if we want to just vote on the version that keeps it out, and then we can take up Simeon's proposal to specify who it should be, because that could be a second sentence.
Can we get some input from Steve whether we would even need to specify? Like, does it need to be in the bylaws who has login rights in order for someone to be assigned login rights next term?
No, it wouldn't need to be in here. I mean, whether or not it's a good idea to say exactly who it is.
Mhm.
I mean, in my mind, if I were to read this and no one else in this council was here and I was asked to interpret it, right, I'd read it as the AA has login rights, and if for some reason there isn't an AA, those login rights get passed to those officers.
Mhm.
Not that those officers always have login rights. Right?
They always do?
No, that they wouldn't.
No.
Where does
And
it-
I think it's dangerous. Like, I know Inga wouldn't want login rights. You know, some people are very adverse to Facebook and to being a social media administrator. So we be speaking for, maybe they should.
think that just-
Sorry, I'm
In a
here.
perfect world, that's how it
Adele,
would work.
Adele, I am
Oh, hi,
here.
Inga.
Oh, hi, Inga.
Yeah. Hi, I'm fine with that.
Okay, sorry, Inga. My
Yeah.
bad. Who was it that didn't like Facebook?
I'm the one who hates Facebook.
Oh, Alice. Sorry, Alice.
I don't hate
I mean, just.
Although Instagram is great. You're really good on that one.
thinking about organizational sustainability, you've always got to ask the hit by the bus question. And if somebody has access to something that nobody else does and is unable to pass it when they're no longer able to do their job for whatever reason, then you're stuck with nobody having access and maybe even losing complete access to this because nobody has a way to get into it. So it might make sense to have more than one person have login access at all times.
Can we make it something that becomes either an executive board member or a proxy voted upon by the quorum, voted upon by a consensus of?
Steve, I want to hear Steve. Go ahead,
From a
Steve.
very practical standpoint, right? The AA can make a file in the drive that's only accessible if you log in from the CEC email account that has the passwords. The president would have access to that and would be able to then get those. So yeah, like there would be, I agree, right? You don't want to be locked out forever and then have to try to either go through a very weird conversation with Facebook about who you are and why you want to try to get your password back.
Good luck with that. They won't.
Yeah, I had to do that with, I did that.
We were actually left in that circumstance when our prior
I was gonna say
person. Yes, it was really it was kind of like somebody left and didn't give us anything.
They took their ball and went home.
I think those should be, I don't know that needs to be outlined in here, but that's like
can we,
for an employee, what should happen?
Right.
Where it should be kept.
Yeah, the problem there was too, we already didn't have an AA when that happened. So the person that took their ball, so anyway.
Yeah, let me also remind people, we can probably take this offline. Amendments can be made to this between now and April, and maybe this is something better left to work over email with each other on.
Okay. Do we want to move to the waiver?
I have two other substantive things I want to discuss. One is the adhering to the New York City DOE social media guidelines. The word is asked, which is a fairly benign word, which doesn't really have any weight. You can ask people to do anything. It doesn't say they have to. So the question is, should it be that we expect them to adhere to it or require them to adhere to it, et cetera, versus just asking them to do something? And was ask an intentional weak ask, or the idea that they...
I like expected.
I like required.
It's totalitarian.
I mean, there are guidelines for a reason. We all do the right thing.
Is Vito on the line? Is Vito?
I am.
Yeah.
Vito,
Can you copy?
Yeah, we hear you.
So I'm very, very protective of everyone's First Amendment rights. Ask is asked. We are not employees. We are asked to engage in appropriate conduct. I think that's the appropriate verb to use. Expect, yeah, okay. I just like ask better. I if we do something inappropriate, well, we have to answer to the voters, in this case, the parent families that are going to elect us, or the borough presidents that are going to appoint us, right? And if Simeon or Inga do something wrong, then the borough president might ask them to resign. If I do something stupid, I say something stupid, and I want to get reelected, the families may say, no, we don't want you, right? So that's the thing. And I think ask is the appropriate verb to use.
I'll just add to that. Council members can also be removed by a quorum of their fellow council members, although I don't.
That's incorrect, Alice, with all due respect.
It is?
So an officer can be removed, right? So we can remove Stephen, but we cannot remove a council member.
So there is no repercussion. Okay.
The only thing we can remove somebody for is a lack of attendance or
and a felony. You can be removed for a
The
felony.
chancellor could potentially remove someone. That's the only person.
So,
okay, so I'm not proposing. I just wanted to ask if that was an intentional decision and how we feel about that. The other issue that I have is any other content has to get approved. Seems like a efficiency issue as far as, if there's anything that we want to put onto our website, are we going to have to wait until an official meeting once a month to vote on it? This sounds like it requires approval, and approval has to be done, I assume, in a public meeting under, the way we're structured as an organization, which seems like it's not going to generate the kind of posting of information that's useful to our community.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, definitely, we definitely thought about that and sort of made the decision to make this You know, we had a couple meetings, as you know, Simeon, and we kind of got into a little bit of back and forth, and there's all these circumstances that could, if you try to outline every potential circumstance, you have a very, very lengthy list of things. And so we tried to make this very simple. I recognize what you're saying. Is there a potential, can you think of a potential?
Sure, if there are politicians that are gonna hold town halls about an issue around the schools that we all think would be great to get out to parents, and that's in 3 weeks and our meeting is in 4 weeks, we can't post it because we won't have a meeting until we.
Voting, can we do a voting process? My understanding is we could do sort of a voting process by, just for content posting via email, like an approval, yes, no. That was my understanding. I don't know, Steve, can you clarify that?
My guess would be, like, if it's an official vote of the council, it's a no. Like, you can only vote in a meeting.
Okay, so just emailing, hey, is everyone okay with posting this by email?
We had previously listed a guideline that anything related specifically to education, even from a political sector. But I think that ran into problems because, you know, education, maybe what, not hypothetically, what Vito might want to see posted versus what Alan would want to see posted, and then to be diametrically opposed in their viewpoints, even though they both think it's educationally appropriate. That was the issue we were afraid of running into. But I agree that there should be a little bit of leeway. And we had also discussed whether or not having a 24-hour period, this is going to be posted. If you have a concern about this, please express it. And then, you know, rules of good faith, if somebody had a concern, it would be held off until we could come to a consensus as a group to say, this is what our holistic approach to posting is. But, you know, became convoluted. It became this thing that's really hard to manage.
It became specifically, right, like the BLM at schools thing, and then yes, it's all open to interpretation, I suppose. But I see what you're saying about wanting to keep it simple. But I don't know, should we talk about the waiver? Should we move on? Should we work on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, what about
then do the 30-day for a May vote? Because if we change it from what we have up, we have to do another 30 days, or we have to have.
We don't,
now.
that's not, Alice, we don't have to. We can do amendments within the 30-day period to this document.
Bylaws, the amendments need to be introduced in the calendar meeting. That's Steve just now.
This is amendments to the bylaws, but this is an amendment to the amendment.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I mean, I would be more inclined to go with something that Adele just described, which is we want to post this. Anybody has an objection, raise their hand. If you do, we'll wait until the next meeting to vote on it. Otherwise, let's post it. And that way we can get things out in a timely manner that nobody objects to. But if there are objections, then we can have a vote and post it later. But I want to wait for.
I agree with Simeon.
Yeah, I agree too. And I think to
That
get
makes
the wording
sense.
just right, we should do this over email and move on right now. I think that makes sense, but we should definitely do that.
Okay, just one last issue about this as it's written is that it talks about all other content, but this in no way addresses parents posting on our social media. And I think we have to maybe address that in some way, because we really lost momentum with social media and using that as a way to get parents involved in talking to us and collecting information. And I think we need to be careful that this is just a system for posting things from ourselves, as opposed to something that's more positive for parent engagement. And also that if we read it as all other content, then it could suggest that even parents get approved to post anything on here. So we have to be, I think, clear about what our policy is saying about content on our social media site, and what having an open discussion forums or comment sections means in this context.
And Simeon, that runs into problems because then we're asking a lot more of Natalia to basically police the content and the commentary, which becomes really difficult. So yeah, there is that to consider.
You know, next time someone might volunteer to do that from the council. We don't know, you know. It might not fall on.
It does open somebody potentially up to liability in the current changing landscape of social media. It is something to consider.
I mean,
that person takes on a responsibility.
What we just heard though from Vito and both Steve is that there's very little that can be done to, I mean, liability on. So you think someone's going to be sued for having?
Well, and so I researched this pretty thoroughly. It's beginning to happen in Europe. And like I said, there is a landscape. And if you look at section 230 about holding entities accountable for what's posted on their social media platforms, and not necessarily something that's happening particularly at this moment, but it is something that is being considered. And so, you know, as I said, with the constantly evolving landscape, it's not necessarily not going to happen. The potential is there.
I still really like the idea of making a comment form on our website for parents to write in their personal concerns. But Vito, I see your hand. Sorry.
So I don't think that parents should be able to post on whatever topic, but I believe if we post something and then they respond, I think that should be allowed as opposed to them like having just whatever open forum posting on the content.
I think that's what we were talking about, right? We weren't talking about open forum. Simeon, is that what you meant? Or you just meant comment?
Yeah. Hey guys, I just want to interrupt. I think we're getting a little bit outside the guidelines of what's on the agenda right now, and I'd like to. This is definitely stuff that we can discuss more offline under the context of the social media. And so to Simeon's last point, if Simeon, are you proposing any amendment, or would you like us to follow up by email?
Think a little further about some of this stuff.
So we have 3 things to follow up on offline before the next meeting. Specifically, those are the sentence, the language around if the AA is unable to perform their responsibilities, and then specifically write-in language allowing for posting of content within sort of a time window that is subject to sort of a look back by the council members if anyone has any opposition. And then the content specifically including some language in here relating to comments as opposed to content that the CEC is publishing. So those are the 3 items I have that we'll work to address between now and April.
And who would have login rights?
Yeah, I guess I wrapped that into the first follow up on. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, thanks everyone. So we will
We're
move
not
on.
going to talk about the waiver, right, Steve?
Sorry. You know what, in the interest of, actually, here's what I will do. We have a waiver and we actually have to address that, but in the interest of time, let's move on from that for tonight. It's not on the calendar meeting, and I'd like to keep moving with the regular agenda because we're a little bit behind schedule here. So that can come up at the April meeting, I think.
Okay. Can I just ask a point of order too? You mentioned that there were a couple social media committee meetings, but you're just meaning the one and then the special meeting where we talked.
Yeah, correct, Alice.
Fine.
Yep.
I was just wondering if I missed.
No, all good. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Report of council president. I just want to make a couple quick comments, basically for the benefit of those who were not on the business meeting. We are, there's a couple of initiatives that we discussed at our business meeting that I just want to make the public aware of. One is the parent survey that we've talked about. We're moving forward with the details on that. We hope to have that completed in time by our next, by our last meeting as a council in June. The second item is we've started discussions at our business meeting about just thinking more and generating more conversation internally around curriculum and school reopening in the fall and summer programming. And it's a very detailed conversation. There's a lot to unpack there, and Simeon is going to sort of take the lead on that. And hopefully we'll be able to produce something around those issues in the near term that we can use as a CEC platform to speak to the DOE, make our views heard with the DOE, and obviously work in collaboration with the district to see what can be done on some of those really important issues. Adele provided an update on the arts website that she's been working on, and that's coming along very nicely. And it's I think it's a very positive project for the CEC and for the children of the district. And I think that's about all that I want to share for the president's report. So next up, we are very pleased to always welcome our superintendent. And for the first time, we are welcoming new superintendent, David Preto, to the meeting. And he's been very patiently waiting as we work through our various issues. But Superintendent Preto, are you still available and ready to give your report?
I'm here. if you're ready to have me.
We are. Please proceed.
Great. Thank you, President Stowe and CEC council members. I have a lot of thank yous at the beginning. It's my first time, so I got a bunch of people to thank. But I want to start by thanking the council. It was great to meet with you all for the first time and get to hear the views and perspectives of the council. It was really helpful to me as incoming superintendent. I am new to the district, so I'm going through kind of an extensive data gathering, getting to know you process, and your input has been helpful in finding out what the needs of the district community are, as well as inform some of the various places that I'm looking for initial information, which I have some to share today. I'd like to also thank the President's Council President, and I'm looking forward to meeting the President's Council this week. I'm really excited about that. I'd like to thank our UFT partners and Ellen Dreesen, our CSA partners and Diane, and our DC 37 partners and Robin for just the warm welcome and just helping me get to know everybody in the district. I really have to thank the District 20 staff. I have to thank Dr. Joe O'Brien for all of his work, not just in supporting me in transitioning into the role of superintendent, but also all of the work he did in supporting the families, students, teachers, principals, staff in his role as acting superintendent in between the transition. So I want to thank Dr. O'Brien for all of his work and continue to work with him in support of District 20. And I want to thank Bill Chin, Sylvia Jasinski, Diane again, and Sean McLean for all their support in the D20 office for helping me kind of get up to speed and get a pulse on what's happening in the district and make sure that we're able to support schools in getting to a satisfactory resolution to the 2020-2021 school year, as well as prepare for what lies ahead in the 21-22 school year. And I want to thank our finance team, John, Marie, and Pat, for doing the Fair Student Funding presentation. And finally, I want to thank all the principals and teachers and support staff who are on the call and who I've met with so far in my introductory meetings, one-on-one, big group, and all in between in getting to know the district. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to support the successes and support what challenges lie ahead, as well as been presented to me so far. So I'll start off with some data points. There were several requests for different data points, so I was able to gather some. I'll start with learning preference data. That was helpful for me in terms of setting a context for the district. So currently 39,794 students enrolled, and of those 24,532 are fully remote students, approximately 62%, with 12,122 listed as blended students. And that's a combination of whatever the school specific programming is. Some are 5, some are 4, some are 3, and various different configurations of school programming. The second piece I think was, and it was touched on previously in the business meeting, are school closures. Currently we have 15 total District 20 schools closed for COVID related cases. That number fluctuates by the day. And I am currently working and supporting our principals who are working really hard when these things come up. They find out that day, they have to notify the community by the next day when the closures happen with their communication with the Situation Room. And I want to thank the principals for being available for doing that work. It's not easy, and they're working really hard to do that. So I want to thank them all. There was a request about device data. So the device data is it's a fluid situation, but I can give some overall numbers with some perspective. So there's a total of 18,957 devices that are currently in various categories of movement in the process, from parents requesting a device from the DOE to a parent and a family actually receiving a device. And there's a lot of different categories. I'll share some numbers with some categories that I think that are relevant to some of the concerns that have been raised in the district, specifically how many students do not have a device currently. So what we have been able to decipher is that of the requested devices, there are currently 928 devices that are under the category of prepared for shipping. And what this means is that a parent has requested a device has been assigned to that family, and the DOE has located a device that is going to be shipped to that school, and the school then provided to the family. This is a category that we closely monitor, because once they're prepared for shipping, we're essentially waiting for them to get to the school, and then the school will distribute them to children. So that's an important one. It's a large number. So we're really working with schools to kind of, just get get as much information as we can as to when devices arrive. We have received 56 very recent requests that are not prepared for shipping. We have 769 devices that have been recalled, and the recalled category are students who are no longer District 20 students and have either moved on and matriculated outside of the system, and or have otherwise left the system and are in possession of a DOE device, and as such, we're working to get those devices back. And that's 769 of those. And then we have 695 canceled requests. So families put in requests, and then for whatever reason, they're canceled. So just a couple of categories that had some of the kind of the larger numbers, but we're working closely with schools, my office, and the Division of Informational Instructional Technology, or DIIT, in order to expedite and do whatever we can to make sure that the devices that go in that process, starting with parents requesting them to parents receiving them, is moving along as best as we possibly can. We had a request about special education data. So one is an easy one. So in terms of district mandates, and when I say district mandates, I mean every single special education service that's included on an IEP, kind of conglomerated all together into a total number. So of those total district mandates, currently 91% of those mandates are being fulfilled through student programming and staffing. I'm working with our special education director in Brooklyn South, along with our principals, to close the gap and finalize those 9%. An additional request, but it is above above benchmarks set by the Department of Education for different time periods in the year. There was a request regarding District 75 demand and seats in the district. I'm still working on that, so I hope to have that data by our next CEC meeting, if not before. But there was a request regarding the total number of students who reside within District 20 who have District 75 designations on their IEP, and then the demand for seats within the district. So I'm working on that request, and I hope to have it before the next meeting, and if not, by the next council meeting. There was a request around multilingual learners. So one thing I was able to decipher is, again, compliance rate for the total conglomeration of district mandates. So currently 97.4% of district mandates for multilingual learners are being served. I will be working with the school staff and our multilingual learner director to make sure that that 2.6% is closed. But that is significantly above DOE benchmarks at this time of the year. However, we're working to close at 2.6%. 100% is what we want. And then just something that has been, definitely brought to my attention at the beginning, and something that I'll touch upon a little bit later, is around the language diversity in the district. And the language diversity is a celebration, and it's also, a challenge for us as a system to make sure that we are finding resources and personnel that can meet the diverse language needs of all the students and families in the district. And I'm looking, as a superintendent, looking at programming across the district to see how our multilingual learners are being served best, in order to ensure that, moving forward, programming in the district reflects the language needs to the extent possible that we have at the moment, in order to address and celebrate the language diversity in the district. What's next? One thing we've been looking at is technology removed from the devices. That's its own category, but we've been looking specifically at web accessibility and how our schools' websites are accessible to families. There's a score that the department gives. And so I'm working with my team and our technology director to support schools who have scores that aren't up to our standards, and we're working to ensure that all school websites and other public forums where schools are reaching out to families are of the highest caliber and easy to navigate for families. Next, I just want to really briefly discuss my process for entering the district. So I have been meeting with all of the official bodies, including the council, to kind of introduce myself, get to know folks. So I have met with the CEC. I'm meeting with the President's Council this week. I'm really excited about it. I'm meeting with the Title I DPAC and introducing myself to the Title I DPAC. I'm also going to be meeting and introducing myself to our District 20 Immigrant Parent Advisory Council. I'm really excited about that. I have met with the parent coordinators and introduced myself and getting a sense of the work that parent coordinators have been doing, especially in remote and blended learning, which has been a significantly different job than they may have been doing in the past. And then obviously with the district leadership team, and then moving on to school leadership teams as my time in the district comes along. I'm also currently meeting with all principals and one-on-one, as well as beginning to conduct school site visits. And one thing that I'm definitely doing is working with my district team to organize a series of parent forums. Currently, the idea that we're looking at right now is language-specific forums. And with those, we're in development. I'm trying to figure out the best way to organize them, coordinate them, and have a format so that the intention is that when the forums happen, that families feel comfortable with it being with the forum being conducted in a language that families understand, and that more of the burden is put on me and not on them. So we're really looking to see how we can coordinate that. I'm working with my team, and that's something coming to the work that the council is doing with the survey is something that I'm definitely willing to, it sounds like the work that we're doing is parallel right now. So I'm definitely willing to work with the council if you're interested in partnering around your survey efforts, or other listening tours with families across District 20. My goal and intention is to be able to hear what all families across the district are saying, so that it can best inform any plans that we have at the district moving forward with their schools and their children. There was a question about, I hate the term learning loss, so I'm going to use learning status. That's okay. I don't want to annoy anybody, but that's what I'm going to use. So currently what I am doing is analyzing the district's use of assessments to monitor student progress. And looking at the resources and capacity of our schools. And I'm doing that through a couple of different means, primarily through surveys and reports that I ask principals to complete, along with myself and Dr. O'Brien's observations of the practice in the schools when we visit them. And what we're really looking at is we're really looking to see about, in addition to the curricular programs and resources, the implementation of the curriculum at school, along with social emotional learning programs, we're really looking to see what we need to do as a district in order to best support principals and schools in being prepared, not just to finish off this school year with all of the various challenges that are presented before us and unanswered questions that there are, but also being sure that we're best positioned and have a strong action plan for reopening in the fall, and thinking about the experiences of all students and what state of mind and the kind of the diverse perspectives and experiences that students have had in blended and remote learning, and also thinking about how their state is going to inform the focuses that principals and schools take on in the fall when we welcome all of our kids back, hopefully. I want to thank the council for inviting me to the Art Showcase meeting. I was happy to support and inform all the principals about the Art Showcase, and I will continue to work with the council to make sure that the schools continue to be informed, and we're here to support celebrating our students. And then finally, on the piece around the council's resolution to secure devices, you know, I am in, you know, support of, I am in support of this, and I am willing to partner in determining and implementing a distribution system to students to ensure that, you know, devices that are secured for District 20 students get to District 20 students. I want to thank everybody. I'm really excited to work with you all, and that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Preto. Would any council members like to make comments or ask questions at this point? And I'm having a problem seeing hands raised on my Zoom, so if you would, just please go ahead.
Yeah. So this is Simeon. Hi, it's great to have you here. We're very excited. There was a couple things you'd mentioned, the special ed numbers. Thank you very much for all the data. You said that they were meeting district benchmarks. Could you tell us a little bit more about those benchmarks? Are those central benchmarks for the whole city? Are they for District 20?
Over the course of the year, through the IEP process, I mean, I guess to put a long story short, there are different dates that students' IEPs come up for review. So over and there are different dates at which students enter the system. There are different dates that services start. So with the variety of how services are determined, entered in the system, and then implemented, there is a little bit of a lag. So in one of the ways that we support our schools and support our children in making sure that they're getting their services is having an expectation around, you know, depending on the time of the year, to what extent are all of the services in that school being served. And it's an imperfect system, but it's one of the ways that we ensure that children are being served fully within their IEPs. And this year has presented a particular challenge in ensuring that mandates are being served fully in the blended and remote environment. However, we are still working with schools until we get to 100%.
So based on those benchmarks, are you saying that in March, it's typical for schools to be not meeting 10%, about 10%?
The data point's not per school, it's a total conglomerate. So we're taking like every single student at District 20, putting together all of their mandates like they were in one school, and then, you know, bringing up a percentage of how many of those mandates are being fulfilled. That's what the data point means.
But is that benchmark you mentioned, is that not connected to the COVID pandemic? That's a typical benchmark for the year, for every year, that 10% of mandated services would not be met in March?
No, it's not. It's not specific. The percentage is specific to this year because that's the percentage that we're at this year. But in terms of benchmarking and monitoring schools in how they flow through in the provision of services and how they go, that's one of the things that we look at. It's not the only thing, but it's one of the things that we look at in determining, you know, at what point intervention and support is needed for schools, for the district.
Okay. It's totally unrelated. My last question. If parents feel that their child would benefit from repeating the grade, they just feel like they haven't learned enough this year, what is the possibility of doing that, and how is that decision going to be made? Is that going to be made by principals and schools based on the needs of the kids? Is there going to be a citywide policy on promotion this year?
There's a citywide promotion policy every year. It's Chancellor's Reg A501. So I have not heard any revisions yet to Chancellor's Reg A501 regarding promotion, but that's something that I can obviously bring back and see if I have any updates at the next council meeting. What I can say is that the process that you're describing, only in grades kindergarten through second grade, promotion is an informed collaboration between the principal, the teacher, and the parent. And then starting in third grade, the promotion policy changes, and that's included in 501.
Okay, thanks.
Would any other council members like to speak?
Alice's hand up.
Go ahead, Alice.
I was so impressed to thank you for joining us and thank you for your update. I have heard learning loss so many times over the last year, and I share your sentiments, but I have yet to hear the term learning status. So could you just talk a little bit about that for parents who might not have a background in education, and how you are going, or how you would like the district to approach the kids who might have a lower learning status, or what is the nomenclature? How do we frame it differently? Because I'm excited to hear it in a different.
I'll be honest, I made up learning status. I just
love it.
kept hearing learning loss, and I don't like the negative connotation, and frankly, I can't say, just being, I don't know, like being kind of wonky about it. I don't necessarily think that it's an accurate term per se. I think that, we do need data to determine at what, where along the, the quote unquote continuum children are in their different content areas and their learning. So assessment systems are necessary for that. And I'm working, again, I don't know how many days it's been, 9, I think, but I've been looking at meeting with principals and looking at what systems they use to monitor student progress, and just kind of bringing that all together to figure out what is the best way to go about it. Currently, we do not have a district-wide assessment system. So I don't have an easy pull for district-wide data. The only, data that would have been available in that mode previously would be New York State assessment data in, 3 to 8 ELA and math, and then 4th and 8th grade science tests. At this point, that data is outdated. So, I'm looking at what we can do to get a handle on where students are. Currently, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's gonna be a school by school task right now, but moving forward, looking to see how a more cohesive system for monitoring student progress. The pandemic has really brought that to light and into conversations in forums such as this. So it's something that we're looking very, very closely at, and as I go through the gathering process.
Sure. We just have a quick a parent in the chat who just was curious, is there someone in the district who is spearheading the students with disabilities compliance, and just like a touchstone? So like a parent could say to this person, I have this concern, or.
You'd start with your school. So if you have a concern, you're definitely going to want to start with your school.
Let's just right. It needs to get up the chain, that they've done all the school.
The next, once there's I would say that if a parent has not, has met with their school and they're not satisfied, or something cannot be resolved, the next step is they can contact Sylvia Jasinski or Bill Chin in my office, and that would be the next step.
Okay, I just wanted to double check that who was the point person. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Do you have any information to share with parents about state testing?
I'm sorry, I saw Rob raise his hand twice, so I didn't want to.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Say that I
Thank you,
didn't see it.
Superintendent Prada. Thank you very much. Thank you for
problem.
being here this evening. I just have a very, very quick comment. I am really impressed with the amount of information you provided in 5 minutes, and it's more precise data than I've heard in the span of 2 years as serving on the CEC. So I'm very excited about what the future holds under your leadership, and thank you for being so informative with very precise information.
I appreciate that, and I hope that I can continue to, bring you what you need.
Simeon, did you want to speak again?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if there's any information to share with parents about state testing.
Nothing further since the announcement that the federal government and the state have decided that we will administer exams at the state level, but I don't have anything. As soon as something comes out, we'll all be talking about it.
Great. Well, I think if there's no further comments, we can.
Steve, Steve, hi, this is Inga. I actually did want to ask a
Sure, go
question,
ahead.
if I
Yeah,
may.
I'm not able to see hands raised for whatever reason tonight, so please go ahead, Inga.
Oh, no worries. Thank you. Good evening. Pedro, thank you for being here with us. I just had a brief question. I mean, you may have heard, you know, in our district, there are a number of parents that are very focused on gifted and talented programs and screen programs. And just wanted to hear from you, you know, in your discussions with principals. I mean, we have a number of schools in this district, or we had a number of schools that had these programs. You know, what is your view on this? You know, how will this work? I know, you know, many families are quite distraught at what has happened with the middle school process for next year, and frankly, even for the lower grades as well. Just want to get your thoughts. Thank you.
My thoughts, or clarification on the policy and the process that they put in place this year. I just want to make sure I hear your question correctly.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think you mentioned you had, you know, have had a number of meetings with principals to get an understanding of the schools in this district and the needs of the parents. And I guess maybe I didn't hear any mention of GNT. So I just wanted to, you know, hear, you know, what has been discussed on those fronts. I think we're all very familiar with the policies in place currently, but, you know, given our schools in this district are unique from that perspective, and that we did have a lot of those programs in this district, just wanted to hear from your conversations if there's anything that you can add there based on, you know, what you've heard thus far in discussions with schools. How will schools be handling this going forward in our district?
Yeah, that's primarily what principals have been most concerned with, is how to address and manage the changes in the admissions process. And you mentioned gifted and talented, the same thing. You know, there's changes to the process this year, so they're just working to ensure that they put in place the changes correctly, and I'm there to support them in doing that. And then there are, you know, the same wonderings about what it's going to look like moving forward. I think that maybe I'm running up the inference ladder here, but it sounds some of the same wonderings about what the structure is going to look like moving forward.
Maybe just to follow up on Inga's, Superintendent, your thoughts on GNT. I guess that's what Inga is going towards, and not to put you on the spot, but just your idea of what differentiated instruction, which has been in place in this capacity. And mind you, we are a very split council on this, so I'm not speaking for anyone, but I do know that a number of parents in our district are very concerned about this topic. So it would be nice to know philosophically what you think and how you envision our district going forward based upon, you know, changes that are obviously being implemented, which are going to have a significant impact on our students, particularly since a lot of our students go out of district to other schools, high schools, and we have a limited capacity of high schools, and a lot of parents come into our district for the types of schooling that we have. So it will impact us in a significant way. So if you could just elaborate possibly on your, you know, your pedagogical approach to GNT, I guess we'll call it. It's so problematic. Okay.
So I heard two things. So I think I heard you wanted to hear my philosophy on gifted and talented, and I also heard something about differentiated instruction.
Yeah, which I guess that's how, you know, we've always envisioned the potential, and we've been trying to implement differentiated instruction across schools for many years. And as an educator myself, I know how difficult it is to effectively implement differentiated instruction, particularly with students who are particularly excelling, in particular, maybe excelling or gravitating towards particular types of educational learning styles. What does that mean to you? You know, maybe you don't, you know, necessarily believe in a specialized type of approach to education where you're separating student, a homogeneous learning environment, or maybe you do. Maybe you feel that it is a special needs, potentially, you know, students have all different types of special needs, including those who are academically at a particular point. And I'm trying to say this as unproblematically as possible, depending upon where everybody stands. But, you know, maybe you have a particular view. You must have a particular view, I'm thinking. But we would really like as a council maybe to have a better understanding of that, or me on the council, again, not to speak for anyone.
Got it. So in reference to gifted and talented programming, that's a citywide program. So my responsibility as a superintendent is to ensure that that the program is implemented. It's a central program. That's my responsibility as a community superintendent. You know, in terms of that specialized program, and frankly, any specialized program, and I've said this before, that it's my responsibility to ensure that what happens in those classrooms is of the highest caliber and quality and meeting the needs of the children in the room, and that any child who wants to get into the room has access and resources and understands the pathway to that. That's my responsibility, right? In terms of my philosophy on, you know, my philosophy is that we hold very high expectations for all students while providing high levels of support. And in order to be able to do so, you know, the use of data is incredibly important in order to support the teacher and all the other folks who are working with the child to be able to tailor the instruction to be able to hold them to high expectations. That's my philosophy, and I approach all the classrooms like that. And that goes for a, you know, a gifted and talented classroom, that goes for a general ed classroom, that goes for, you know, any classroom that has some of these various labels on them. But I always look at them with that lens, and also with the lens of, listen, I'm a parent too. I have 2 children. They both go to public school, and I go with the lens of, would I have my child in this classroom? And if not, what are we going to do to make sure that they that I would be comfortable with having them in there? And I have incredibly high expectations.
I see Yifang's hand up, and then Vito. So Yifang, go ahead.
Yeah, I think my question is somewhere around the lines that Adele has, you know, summarized. I think I also raised the question, you know, in the previous, you know, our council member meeting with the superintendent. So as you know, like our district has a lot of low income Asian new immigrants. So like for this population, which I once was myself, like we feel right now under like, especially under like current atmosphere, we feel like especially targeted, and like a lot of families come here because they have their American dreams, and then they believe in, you know, differentiated learning, like they'll summarize. And so like I think I would really like to hear, you know, our new superintendent, Mr. Prado's view on this, like more clearly, maybe like, you know, like our previous superintendent, I think Katrina, she retired. She's in support of such learning. We have like a superintendent program, for example, honors program at McKinley, if I'm not mistaken. So like, as a new superintendent, do you have something like that in mind as well? I think this is really important for District 20.
No, thank you for that. And I did hear loud and clear. And what I wanted, and one of the things that you, to start with the concerns around the Asian community, and especially thinking about, you know, entry into the fall for next year, that's something that was top of mind when thinking about how we're examining not just assessment systems and practices in schools, but also curricular practices, social emotional learning systems, and other kind of quote unquote school culture structures that we really look to in thinking about what climate children are going to enter back into when they come in the fall. And so when I say the different perspectives and experiences that have been experienced by children through blended remote learning, that includes our, you know, our Asian students and community with the specific concerns that you raised. Like I heard you loud and clear, so that's going to be something that is top of mind, along with the varied needs that have happened across the district with all families. With regards to, you know, different programs that exist currently within schools, I'm still in the process of examining them and learning about them, and I've heard the names of them. And I'm you know, and I understand the different views so far that have been expressed to me by different folks in the community, but I haven't seen them yet. I haven't seen them in action, and I haven't been able to give you an accurate assessment of how they exist and live currently in the schools, because I haven't seen them. So I definitely will include and keep this request in mind as I go through schools and analyze their systems and the programming that they're providing to all their students before I can give any kind of assessment and action plan around what the future of the district looks like.
Vito, did you want to speak?
Yes, yes. It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Superintendent Preto, even virtually. Thank you. You sound like a politician. You're learning the role very, very well. The truth of the matter is, the next mayor is going to decide this. If he tells you he wants a G&T type program in every single District 20 school, will you work hard to fulfill that campaign promise, sir? Yes or no, please?
I'm an employee of the Department of Education. I work at the pleasure of the Chancellor.
Thank you very much, sir. That's what I wanted to hear. So the people out there know what they have to do. Thank you very much, sir.
Any other comments for Superintendent Prato? Okay.
Alice has her hand up. Oh, sorry, Steve.
sure.
Alice had
No.
her hand up. Yeah.
Alice, can we make it a reasonably expedient question or comment?
Clarity on what, as far as I know, differentiated learning means with children of different abilities in the same class. So what does it mean in the context of a G&T program?
Can you elaborate on your question?
Well, I was listening to Adele. I don't really understand what differentiated. I try to ask questions that, as just a parent who doesn't have an education background, other parents might be wondering. So I'm listening to the discussion and I'm hearing differentiated learning in a G&T context. And when I've heard that before, it's been in a classroom with just mixed ability children, some advanced, some average, some maybe even an ICT class. So how does it translate for G&T? Is it specifically for G&T kids who might have an IEP as well, or?
I think that, I'll say this, I think that using the term differentiated instruction and applying it just to what you're calling quote unquote levels of students is I think it's a little bit of an
Okay.
or an undersimplification actually. Differentiated instruction just means that like the school, the principal, and the teacher are responsible to provide an experience that helps students perform at standard level, right? Or above it, or wherever they're at, right? That's what the charge is. And differentiated instruction is using a variety of pieces of information in order to tailor the instruction to support the child in meeting the expectations of that standard. So it could be an ELA or math level. It could be a reading assessment of their reading ability. It could be a learning style, children more tactile or more visual or more auditory, or right. So all of those things fall under the bucket of differentiated instruction. So all the different tools that a teacher is going to pull in order to support that child getting access to meeting the demand of the standard is
So it's like a
what
holistic,
differentiated instruction is.
it's more like being holistic and flexible to meet the needs of the child, no matter what level they're at.
Yes, it's being responsive to the needs being responsive to the needs of the child.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
No problem.
Okay, thank you very much, Superintendent, for being here.
Thank you.
Really do appreciate it. We look forward to future communications, of course.
Likewise.
Thanks. Next up, we have public speaking time. And I will just read through the logistics just to that we read at the beginning of the meeting, just to make sure everyone understands. There are 3 ways for the public to comment tonight. The first is from participants who signed up using the form. Natalia has posted that link in the chat. In addition, if you'd like to speak, you can press the hand icon on the bottom of your screen to be recognized, or type your name and the word speak in all caps into the chat box. Second way participants can ask questions is via the interpreters on the language lines for our English, for our Arabic, Spanish, and Mandarin speakers on the meeting tonight. And then finally, if you've called in using your phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, and Natalia will unmute your line to allow you to speak. So with that being said, Natalia, is there anyone in line to speak?
No one signed the form, and also the translators were dismissed because no one was on the line.
You mean for public comment?
This is for public comment now. Yep.
No, why were the translators dismissed?
Because there was no one on the line.
There's no one on the line.
To make a comment. Okay, I'm confused.
No, there was no one in the meeting.
That language, I understand. Okay.
No one is using their services.
I understand. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see anybody's hands raised, but no one signed using the form.
Okay. Oh, I see Tamara now.
I can help if anybody needs interpretation with Spanish.
Thanks, Mauricia.
You're welcome.
Natalia, can you unmute Tamara?
Yeah. You should be able to.
Hi, it's actually Tamara. So I'm a little bit disappointed with the last few minutes of this meeting. Just with the simple fact that, you know, I believe the CEC is supposed to represent every parent. And to sit here and see most of the members, or like half of the members, ask the same question repeatedly about G&T, yet nobody's asked about what, you know, what we could do for special education, D75, or even any of the L students that are having issues in the community due to this pandemic. And it's becoming very clear where a lot of the I guess the push is for, and I feel that's very unfair. Okay, because it's not, this district is not just made up of G&T, it's not. And it seems to be the focus at almost every conversation that gets started. And you need to include other people, okay, that are having issues in the district besides the G&T. It really is, because we have so many of our L parents that the children are the only ones that speak English. The parents don't even speak the language. And a lot of the parents are afraid of reaching out to the administration because they feel that they can't trust the administration, or the administration they're fearful. And they fear retaliation, they fear getting help because it's gonna lead to maybe ICE showing up at their door, situations like that. And I feel like these are concerns that don't get recognized a lot in this forum. And these are conversations that we need to continue to have, because these parents are the advocates for their kids. And if they don't know who to go to, or they don't feel like their voice is being heard, then what happens? What do we do? And we can't have our parents feel like nobody cares about them. So I think that's something that needs to be fixed very, very much in this district.
Thank you so much, Tamara, and I'm sorry about your name pronunciation. I got that wrong. Natalia, do we have anyone else?
I don't see any hands raised.
Great.
Oh, actually, can I respond to that?
Steve, is that, can we ask Steve if that's?
Just public comments.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought.
If you want to, you'd have to motion to add something to the agenda if you want to have a conversation.
It's never mind. Never mind. It's not worth the trouble.
Yeah, let's just stick with public comment and move on. Okay. If everyone, I think we can move on from public comment now and get to the last item on the agenda, which is the budget amnesty resolution. And Natalia, can you just share that? And while Natalia's sharing that, I'll just go through very quickly. You know, this resolution basically is asking, the last meeting, we asked the state to not supplant funding for the New York City DOE with any federal aid that it received. And there was a comment at the meeting. Adele actually commented, maybe we should be targeting this more, this kind of advocacy towards the city. And so this actually resolution, there's been a lot of talk about the DOE and what it can do to help schools, individual schools, get through the sort of financial hardship that's been come about as a result of the pandemic and the economy. And so this resolution, this was circulated by the Education Council Consortium, asking CECs to approve it. I read it. I like it. I understand it's a fairly, you know, some might say straightforward, basic resolution, but I think that our job here is to obviously all hopefully agree on it, and then ask the DOE to do more than just hold harmless for 25% of register loss, but hold harmless for the full amount of register loss this year that schools have experienced. And then we can use this as a, you know, potentially as a platform with other CECs. I plan to respond back to the ECC and let them know that we passed it. And hopefully that will just further broaden the support for the DOE to actually take action on this and hold schools harmless this year. So that's really how this resolution came to be on the agenda tonight. And I would just ask members to support voting for it.
I like it.
And there's a very interesting point here that there is precedent for this. And in 2013, there was an amnesty program put in place, and that's been pointed out both in this resolution and by the Controller's Office as well. And specifically, it would just call on the City of New York, Mayor Bill de Blasio, current Chancellor Carranza, and then we've also added future Chancellor Misha Porter to the resolution. So I guess are there any comments from council members, or can we move to a vote?
Move to vote.
Second.
Sure. Second. Roll call vote, I guess.
Yep.
Okay, Steve Stowe,
Yes.
okay, Dina Gergis,
Yes.
okay, Robert Aguilar,
Yes.
Alice Liccardo,
Yes.
okay, Inga Smolyar,
Yes.
Alan Aha's excuse, Mauricia Cadillo,
Yes.
Yifeng Chen,
Yes.
Adele Doyle,
Yes.
okay, Vita Labella,
Yes.
okay, Simeon Stolzberg.
Yes.
It's unanimous with one excuse.
Great. And I think now is just reminder that our next meeting, Natalia, if you have that up faster than
April
I can.
14th.
April 14th. Please join us for our next meeting at April 14th. I just would like to thank everyone who joined us. I know they're not here anymore, but thank our translators as always. And is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Second.
Yeah.
All in.
Wait. Hold on. We have a parent. I don't know if we want to honor it before. I saw.
I'm more than happy to hear if there's one parent raising their hand. I'm more than happy to hear them. Do we need to make a motion to
I don't think.
I
we-
make a motion to allow the parent to speak.
Yeah.
And now I'm not seeing her anymore, so if she's
Alan?
here.
Margaret Elliott Sherry.
There she, yep. Margaret? Think you can unmute yourself?
You should be able to.
We'd love to hear from you. Give her a second.
Steve Weezer is saying she's no longer.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Maybe she made a mistake. She meant to leave and not.
Okay. So back to the motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The meeting
Good
is
night,
adjourned.
everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Happy holidays.
Night.
Good night.
And thank you everyone who
Bye,
stayed to
everyone.
the end.
Oh,
Good
yeah.
night.
Thank you as always, Natalia.
Bye, Natalia.
Great job.
Bye.